The whiskies I'm going to share with you all tonight is indeed, or they are indeed, they're not is really these are whiskies that until these bottles existed, the whiskey previously could not be bought, that previously didn't exist. I think that's kind of interesting. But what I want to kind of explore tonight is as I sip through these things, I've been saving them up over the last few weeks. As I sip through these things, consider, are they representative of where we are in whiskey today, right now in 2023, or do they give us some clues about whiskies from our perspective as malt whiskey enthusiasts? I'm looking forward to trying them. Hope you're looking forward to another Thursday night hangout. I'll see you all in a second. Hello, whiskey folk. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the vPub. Welcome to Thursday night. Hope you're all doing very, very well. It's fantastic to see so many of you in. I'm just going to pin a wee link up there at the top of the chat. I hope you're all fantastic. I hope you're comfortable. I hope you've got a dram in front of you. And if you have got a dram in front of you, is it something from maybe a new distillery or a new whiskey that maybe hasn't really existed before? Of course, I tend not to do content based on new releases. I mean, never say never, of course. Sometimes I find a way to make new releases kind of fit another topic, something else to talk about. But I'm not really here to kind of advertise and share lots and lots of new releases that come out. Be impossible to keep up, as I'm sure you can imagine. But some of them do strike a chord. Some of them do seem interesting. Some of them are kind of zeitgeisty and people want to talk about it. However, tonight it's different. I've got 6 bottles that I've been saving over recent weeks since I came back from the summer break. I've been buying these whiskies as they come along. 1 or 2 of them I was waiting on, and 1 or 2 of them I was really hoping that I did have an opportunity to get my hands on, and I did. There's 1 or 2 that I missed as well. It would have been nice to get my hands on a Glenallachie and 1 or 2 others. But honestly, I've done very, very well to get the 6 that I've got next to me tonight. But very specifically about these 6 whiskies, these are not just new releases from an existing distillery. These are new releases of completely new whiskey. And I don't just mean new distilleries. I mean new whiskey that's made at, in the case of 1 of them that I'm going to share with you tonight, whiskey that's made at a distillery that's been around since the 1960s. That still being the case, this is new whiskey from that distillery, completely new. It's never been made there before. Anyway, that's the topic I'm going to run through tonight. I'm going to kind of do an uncorking session. I'm going to taste the neck pour, share my first impressions with you. So it cannot be a legitimate, fully formed review. It's just first impressions. And then from there, kind of consider their value proposition. Consider what they mean to us as whiskey botherers, whiskey lovers, whiskey enthusiasts, all of those great things, and consider what they signal for today and maybe what they might, how they might be able to give us a glimpse into Scotch whiskey's kind of immediate, short-term, medium-term future. Because I think in some respects they do that. They do that. Anyway, welcome everybody. It's fantastic to see you all. Cheers. The link I've pinned at the top of the chat is, of course, the voting for the Online Scotch Whisky Awards. We've all got to do our bit. Sorry if there's a lot of people talking about it right now. It's kind of built up to that point where it's imminent. The voting will close on Sunday night at midnight, wherever you are. And that means that at that point, it'll be locked in. We will have 9 new winners for 2023. And that Ralphie and I and everybody else behind the scenes will run off and start to get things ready for the ceremony on the 4th of November. There are still a couple of close races in some of the categories right now. For that, your vote counts. But more than that, remember that a huge part of the winner ceremony on the 4th of November this year is going to be sharing what you are enjoying, what you want to put forward as the best in whiskey, what you want to celebrate in the wild card selection of the People's Choice. It's fantastic to see that there's going to be a winner for each of the categories. That's great, and it's great to celebrate with the winners who are willing to step forward. But I think it's really, really interesting to kind of harvest that data, get feedback from the whiskey drinking community, the Scotch whiskey loving community, and feedback what people are genuinely enjoying. So even if you don't feel you can make meaningful votes for something that you have tried, you would try again, you would buy again, something you would recommend to a friend, if you don't feel that you can make votes based on that, you can still make a valid contribution on the Online Scotch Whisky Awards by entering some entries in any of the categories that you feel informed enough that you feel that you can contribute towards, and that wildcard People's Choice section. That's all I'm going to say about it tonight. Please consider voting. It means so much for all of us Scotch whisky loving drinking enthusiasts. Before I get into things tonight, and I am going to try and keep it short tonight because I'm going on holiday tomorrow. And apologies, that means because I'm going on holiday tomorrow, there is not a vPub next Thursday night. And it slipped my mind, I've just been so busy, I haven't even reached out to anyone else to see if anyone else wants to give all you beautiful whiskey folk and dedicated barflies some safe harbour while I'm away on a Thursday night next week. But I'll be back here the week after on the 2nd of November with a guest. But it means I'll be taking a wee break next week. I hope I can be forgiven. Let's jump in to the lounge and welcome some of you beautiful whiskey folk and dedicated barflies. Somebody was asking me recently, what is a barfly? How do I become a barfly? Really, there's no action to become a barfly. It's an optional thing. It's like malt mates or whatever. It's just if you want to kind of, with the lack of an alternative, right? I kind of am part of the community or whatever. Some people choose to refer to themselves as barflies because they're in around the vPub, they're in a virtual pub, so they're hanging out in a pub, so therefore are a barfly. If you pay the YouTube subscription, $1.99 a month in whatever currency that you're in, dollars, euros, pounds, whatever, what you do there is you mean that you support the concept of no ads in the vPub. There's no advertising on Aquavitae channel these days. Everything starts off default, not monetized. There are some legacy videos out there that I've just not gone back and toggled off. I really don't get much from advertising revenue, not now certainly, and all the back catalogue for the last 2 years now has been ad-free thanks to the barflies. My funding, my support comes from my amazing Patreon supporters. If you go to Patreon, patreon.com and search for Aquavitae, you will find me. That is how I exist. That is how I've been able to buy all of the whiskies I'm going to share with you tonight and all of the whiskies that I ever share with you with my own money. My patrons empower me and keep me fully independent. Sometimes I'm reminded that I don't explain that often enough or clearly enough. And sometimes the comments that come in make that obvious. Alan McLaughlin is here. So good to see you, buddy. Saying good evening, Roy. Good evening to you, Alan. You were at the club the other night, and I said hello briefly, and then realised that I was looking around, and you were gone. So I missed you again, buddy. But we'll bump into each other very, very soon. Justin Wan is saying finally tried an ex-bourbon lag this evening. Aquavitae at a friend's. I'm sure it's not new enough for tonight, but I really enjoyed it. Well, absolutely. Lag is featured on the vPub in the past, and I think lag is a fantastic example that would fit into the theme tonight because before the first lags came along about a year ago now, the first 3 batches that came out, that was brand new whiskey that did not exist before. So lag was not something that was made at Lochranza and they brought out and called it lag. No, lag was built for the sole purpose of making lag whiskey. Hello, Roy. Is Drew from Arizona saying, great to see you live. Greetings, fellow barflies. Drew, I hope you're keeping well, and it's fantastic to welcome you live, buddy. Whiskey Vault is here saying, good evening, Roy. Looking forward to these uncorkings. I can't keep up with these all new releases, so thanks for doing the hard work for us, I guess. Listen, there is a huge element of that. It's not really... some of these will be sold out. Some of these will be tricky to get. If I can't get them easily, I kind of back off. I'm not really interested in things that are really hard to get. things that you need to be connected or in a queue or in a ballot and all of these things. If my community are going to struggle to get a hold of bottles, I tend to back off a wee bit. And I only really pursue bottles that I think have got some worth to talk about. All of the ones tonight have actually happened across fairly easily, either because of the scale of the outturn, how widely available they were, or just because of being in the right moment at the right time. And there was a bottle available for me to buy with no scrum or hassle at all. And the idea is that I crack them open and share them with you, not so that you can go and chase these, but so that you can understand where they fit into our whisky enjoyment landscape. If I'm able to understand where that is, of course. Whiskey Works, Graham, good to see you, buddy. I'm looking forward to welcoming you back in Glasgow soon. Evening, Aquavitae and Barflies. I hope you're making it across with your buddies in the Hallion Battalion. And Gerbin is saying, good evening, everybody in Aquavitae. How are you all doing? I'm doing well, Gerbin. But of course, because I'm finishing up to go on holiday tomorrow, I've picked up a wee jaggy throat today, and it's got sorer as the day's gone on, so hopefully my voice stays. It'll be a short vPub if it doesn't, if it disappears. And George is saying, hello, Roy from Arizona. Good to see you, George. A couple of barflies in Arizona. It's magic to welcome you in, George L. He's saying, I was wondering if new whiskies meant new make. I guess you have put me straight. No, these are whiskies that, until these bottlings, didn't exist. They were not available for anyone to buy. Wee drams come in from Alan Smith already. Bought me a dram to say, enjoy your holiday, Roy. Have some recreation, rest and recreation, and a wee dram. Alan, that's really nice of you, buddy. Thank you so much for the kind wishes and the dram. Cheers. And Sally JP, good to see you, Sally. How are you keeping? I always wonder if I pronounce your name well, my friend. Cheers again for vPubs, OSWAs, and everything. Off to Islay on Saturday with family to celebrate Ralphie's 1000th. It's pretty tricky for me to say that. Excited, that's right. Ralphie's got something special in store for us all next week to celebrate. I hope you picked up his 999th that went out earlier this week. It was a really quite a gushing homage to Anok 24, and one of Ralphie's favourite distilleries, one of my favourite distilleries as well, Knockdo, who make the Anok brand. But he had put out the 24-year-old. Very positive about it, he was too. But next week, for his 1000th review celebration, he's going to be doing something that's really quite special. I'm excited too. Fantastic, Solly. And Graham Young has also bought me a dram. Cheers, Roy. Vacation will be well timed indeed. Rest up. A dram will help that throat medically and indicated for sure. So I'll take that from you, Graham. You are in medicine. You are a doctor. So I'll take your advice to heart and see how we do tonight. Cheers, Graham. Cheers, Solly. Lee J's celebrating being a member of the Barfly for 42 months in a great community, great people. Cheers. Not least because of people like you, Lee J. Can't wait to welcome you back in Glasgow, my friend. It'd be fantastic to see you. Greetings from Inverness, says Highland Hamish, been a member for 28 months. Highland Hamish, another fantastic member of our community, buddy. Great to see you popping up and meeting people when they make it to Inverness. Who am I missing in the chat? Jerry Miller is here. Good evening, Roy, saying. And Arnie Tiger is saying there are many new exciting distilleries. There are indeed, Arnie. And as somebody's already mentioned, I think it was Whiskey Vote mentioned that it's pretty tough to keep up. Lee J is saying good evening, everybody. And hey, Roy, he's also chatting in the lounge as well. Fantastic, Lee J. Brian Storm is saying evening, Roy and Barflies. Looking forward to this. Is the only one I've tried is Arrival. Sharing a sample with my dad. We both loved it. So interested to hear your thoughts. And Whiskey Vote was back saying, have you seen the live stream from Whiskey Wims and Whiskey Rover Jason on the OSWAs? They were quite critical about the nominees. I didn't. I got a link sent to me about it, saying that they'd spent quite a bit of time talking about it, and it was mostly criticism, but I didn't watch it. But what I did do is I went in and I left a comment there to say, Stuart, you want to talk about the OSWAs? I'm here, buddy. I'll come onto your platform, and you can literally ask me anything. There is nothing off the table when we talk about the OSWAs, when we talk about integrity, transparency, how it works. Afterwards, if whatever shakes out in terms of the nominees, in terms of the winners and all of these things, Ralphie and I are really just spectators. We're the messengers at the end of the day. Stuart is part of the program for this year. what he will start to see is that these nominees they're not designed. They are a product of consensus. Nobody is going to be happy. The problem that we have with the OSWAs is that now that they exist, there is something to criticise. The alternative is that they don't exist, and then there's no criticism anymore. But the OSWAs is the only initiative that speaks on behalf of and to the community. I don't want to bash any other awards platforms. We don't want to replace any other awards platforms. There are lots of legitimate platforms out there doing awards. There are maybe some that are maybe less legitimate, but I don't really understand them all. Some are blind panel, some are pay to play. All of them have their place, and all of them are well established. We are not trying to compete with that, because I feel that a lot of those programs and initiatives are very much there to reflect the industry and celebrate the industry. And it's very, very industry focused. And I don't know how much customer feedback, customer insight, customer experiences are woven into any of those platforms. But because we are doing this online, we can crowdsource things a little bit, and we can try our very hardest to do something that represents the quiet drinker, the whiskey exciter, the whiskey botherer, the enthusiast, the geek, however you want to self-refer, us that buy these bottles with our own cash. They don't get given for free. They're not made by our peers or our bosses or whatever it may be. They're things that we go into a shop and buy, things that we order online, things that we pay for. That's what the OSWAs are all about. The Nirvana fallacy tells us that people will criticize it based on a perfect model, or criticize it based on something that represents their idea of a perfect model or their idea of the best nominations or whatever it may be. What they're really talking about is they're comparing the OSWAs to something that doesn't and cannot exist. The OSWAs is not a perfect model, but we will try and find ways to refine it and improve it, as we've done year on year. What I often find with the criticisms that come in about the OSWAs is that people criticize without ever being able to offer a reasonable and executable alternative. So I will try and find time to watch Stuart and Jason's head-to-head. I will try and find time to take on board their comments. But what I really want to do is just kind of shake out anything that's left on the table of uncertainty and make it clear. I've always said about the OSWAs, anybody with any kind of legitimate concern that's standing in a legitimate place, that's prepared to legitimately use up my time, I'll lift the lid on the OSWAs and let them see everything. And I think anybody that looked at it might be impressed at just how much effort goes into it. I hope. Anyway, Kiwi Goris is celebrating being a member for 17 months in Happy Holiday, Roy. I just came back from mine. Cheers. We're missing each other. We're not exactly synced up, Kiwi Gor, but it's nice to have you here tonight. Cesare the Flying Mooch. I think, Cesare, are you out? You're in the Czech Republic, Poland, maybe? Saying, hi, Aquavita Roy, what are we drinking today? I'll tell you in a second. And Whiskey Novice Jim is celebrating being a member for 43 months, saying such busy times in whiskeydom. Loving it. I'm loving it too. Jim Ingram, can't wait to hang out with you again, fella. Cheers. In my glass tonight, just because I wanted something that was pretty, it's actually much, much better than I remember. But it was pretty clean, pretty linear, kind of middle of the road, a balanced kind of calibrator type dram to kind of set me up for what we're going to be doing tonight with uncorking and things. And maybe not the wisest choice, but I went for a Japanese whiskey, a Japanese blended whiskey. Look at my camera, not doing it. There it does, eventually. Japanese Harmony from Hibiki. I have to say it's quite a tasty wee whiskey, only 43% ABV, absolutely zero transparency whatsoever, but it's not what this whiskey's about. I think anytime you sip this, like tonight, it's reminded me just how good it is. Actually, it's quite a well put together whiskey, but a light whiskey, 43%, just something to get to whet my whistle before we go into some uncorkings. Alistair Gray It's counting down 23 days to Glasgow Whisky Festival. Canny wait. That's amazing, Alistair, that you're actually coming. Will that be the first time that we have met? I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure that'll be the first time. I've just made a wee note of something, my friend. We need to talk, a wee direct message. Anyway, let's see how we got on. Have I caught most of the comments, the recent comments? Have I welcomed in enough folk? Jimmy Legg is in tonight saying people talking about the OSWAs in any way critical or no. It's preferable to no one talking about them. That's exactly it, Jimmy. We've got something that exists now, so any kind of critique or feedback is welcome. It'd be good if there was thought put into it as well, because when we get critique, there's a good chance that we've already worked out some of the flaws, but we're not really quite sure what the best way is to kind of fix them. We want to keep it simple. We want to keep it straightforward. We want to keep it something that celebrates whiskey, that's a positive thing, generally speaking. But we want it to make sure that it's something that's representative of the Scotch whisky community. That's what it's about, the Online Scotch Whisky Awards, representing the online Scotch whisky community. Actually, the Scotch whisky community in general. Good. Gordon Fraser is saying good evening. Good evening, Gordon Fraser. It's nice to have you in, my friend. And Jamie Brown is saying, I think Stuart and Jason's criticism was about the selection itself, not the process, which is all part of the fun of the OSWAs, I think. Aye. And I think that's probably the biggest criticism that we get every year, because people just think that shouldn't have won. Shouldn't have won. But of course, it's not subjective. I mean, it's just an opinion that they have. And in their mind, it makes perfect sense, and it's valid, and they're right. But no one person, it frustrates me that when I see the nominations some years ago, really? Is this the best we can do? And then other times I see the nominations, I go, that's a good selection, or that's a good pick, that's a nice pick, I'm glad to see that in there. Because I don't get to pick these. Ralphie doesn't get to pick them. We just tell you what they are. We had to always open this up from the beginning. Ben Marnock is saying greetings from wet and windy Speyside. Visited Glenfarclas, Glen Grant and Ben Ryelaw with more to come tomorrow. I'm a wee bit jealous. I bet you don't even mind that it's wet and windy, Ben. It's nice to welcome you in here, and I'm glad that you're up in Speyside enjoying yourself on a whisky trip. Okay, welcome everyone. Good. Good stuff. Just noticed a spider's web on my mic. Some of you don't notice till the lights go on. Welsh is saying, I don't think that a handful of tubers represent our community. Let's spread it out to the chat. Welsh, it's not a handful of YouTubers. We've got 65 contributors. We've got people in bars from the Bon Accord, from the NCNU in Edinburgh. We've got retailers on board. We've got people who do podcasts. We've got people who write reviews. We've got people, I just maybe, and we've got everybody in the community. Anybody that wants to step forward and log onto our website with a Google account can vote. I don't know how to make it any more open and still keep it something that can be administered faithfully. It's not a handful of YouTubers. That was the first year, 24 YouTubers. Even 24 YouTubers wasn't a handful. I think it's, am I betraying how impassioned I am about this thing? Probably am, Toro buddy. Sorry, apologies, but I am. We think about these things and we try to make it as inclusive as we can, but it has to be managed. So we opened up, we went from 24 to, I think, 50 odds or something. So we doubled in 1 year, and then this year we've increased again to 65 contributors. So it's a lot to manage. And Martin Fielder is saying, hey, missed you at the Bastards Ball in Texas. I'm sorry, Martin, I know. Had a naturally presented Cragganmore. Why we get more of that? I know, Martin. It's amazing, isn't it? And I agree with you. And I think that's the mission and the goal of a lot of producers out there, to try and bring us more of that, but it's becoming more and more challenging as time goes on. David Lorenco, good to see you, David, out in Portugal, David, I think. This year, some gurus from the Lisbon Whisky Church made a semi-blind tasting of the best whisky category. It's amazing how different it is, just comparing from memory. 6 great ones this year. I saw that. I think that was Bruno. I think it was Seb. I think it was yourself, David. Maybe there's another one I'd recognised as well, I think. All of you just sitting together doing that wee comparison and making you realise that how tough it is and how subjective it all is. And at the end of the day, I think, and I've often spoken about this, I think the nominations are just as powerful as the winners. I certainly think that People's Choice is just as powerful as anything we do in the OSWAs. Just that top 10 chart is really interesting feedback for me every year. Now, you can imagine that if we have 4,000 or so people voting, how many votes that could potentially generate, but how many free text fields that can generate, all of those have to be counted. The work that goes in behind the scenes to bring you that is significant. David Brody's saying you'll never please everyone, so don't burst your head. Personally, I won't be happy until we win something. David Brody's obviously out there at Bunnahavn. David, you've got a fantastic entry in the top line. You've got, and I think it's based on the 2022 release, from what I can gather. But you've got an entry in there, and you know, there was, in fact, last year Bunnahavn 12 was voted in a couple of categories, wasn't it? And I'm sure there will be more of it in the future as well. And they cross, if people don't like something about it, they should be grown up and not bother with it rather than moaning. But as long as it's not, I don't think it is moaning. I don't think it's moaning. I think people need to be able to express whatever concern is rattling around in their heads, and then be received in a professional way to say, right, I get it. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. In YouTube, we learn to be very, very thick-skinned very, very quickly, because YouTube, at Whiskey, YouTube is beautiful. You guys are amazing. It's super positive. I think we've done a good job of kind of encouraging that positivity and that kindness, that politeness most of the time. But we do get really quite brutal comments at times. People that watch you and have grown to understand who you are will start to forgive you for things, and they won't be mindful about criticizing things that might be jarring to other people. They're already content and they're happy, and they understand that your vibe and whatever you put out there. Newer people that come along are people that are not really, don't understand everything quite as clearly, are likely to critique and leave comments that might be seen to be a bit more negative. They can be very, very valuable, because even if you're not going to take any real action or change anything, what it will help you do is fix your description about what you do, how to describe what you do, how to share what you do in a way that will help people understand it a bit better. So getting feedback, even if it seems like it's moaning, is often very, very valuable. You're right there, Roy, says Jimmy Legg. The skin and the internet are a horrible combination. Sorry, thin skin and the internet is a horrible combination. I think I'm quite thin-skinned, honestly speaking, Jimmy. I'm a wee bit sensitive at times, and I think you probably know that. But I think doing this thing has taught me to be a lot more pragmatic over the years, and also be a lot more patient with people. Peter Lee, it's a damp, windy evening at Kwangtung. OSWA is filled in. Thank you, Peter. Thank you so much. I hope that some of your choices power through for you on the day. Whiskey with Molly saying, people think it's okay to have a pop at YouTubers. It's not like you go to their place of work and tell them their Big Macs are rubbish. Listen, but that's the point, is if you're just having a go, if it's a personal attack, or if you're just being rude or impolite, it's just I don't even care. I either don't respond, or especially if it's anybody being rude to a guest or anybody that's ever appeared on one of mine, I'll just delete your comments. It's not welcome. It's not critique. It's not constructive in any way. I'll just delete those. But I will not delete negative comments or critical comments. I just leave them there. Hopefully I've responded to a lot of them. Hillswood is saying, evening, Roy. Does an 8-year-old Lakestram count as new? What did you think of the 5-year-old Inchdairnie sample? Helen, I've still got half of it left. You might have spotted on Sunday night, I only poured half of it. Thought it was fantastic. There's no way I would pick that out as a 5-year-old whiskey ever. Obviously, something to do with the cask, the selection, things like that. But I think we're all becoming a little bit more open-minded about younger spirits. And that's a lot to do with being forced into that position, but it's also got so much to do from the efforts of the distilleries to bring a different take on 5-year-old spirit. If we go back 50 years and drink 5-year-old spirit, or if we even went back 15 or 20 years and drank 5-year-old spirit, it would be completely different. What's happening today, the 5-year-old spirit that we have today, is really quite an interesting thing. And it gets me pretty optimistic for the future. It was a wee wonder, says Helen. And Jim Whiskey Novice says, going on YouTube to do anything, what are we thinking? Well, we wanted to share our opinions. As such, we have to accept the pluses and the negatives, says Jim Ingram. We'd be very naive to think otherwise. And I think in whiskey, we're actually in a relatively safe space, Jim. We really are. Let's get moving on the topic. Don't have a lot of housekeeping tonight, just to remind everyone to please support where they can on the OSWAs if it's your thing. I hope that it is. At least give it a try and see what you think. As I say, I'm on holiday next week. Come back, there's a guest vPub on the 2nd. Then immediately after it is the OSWAs winners ceremony on Saturday the 4th. Ralphie will hopefully be joining me. We'll do it alongside each other, and we will be the messengers. And we'll just sit there and tell you what you voted for. And we'll get shouted at for it. And we'll also tell you what your People's Choice Top 10 chart picks are as well. From there, there's another vPub the following Thursday, and then it's the Glasgow Whisky Festival weekend. Cannot wait. Cannot wait. I was tired after the Legfest weekend, like we all were, but we were tired out of doing positive, happy things. And I'm looking forward to some more of that on the Glasgow Whisky Festival weekend. I'm hosting an event on the Sunday, the 12th. It's full. There is 1 or 2 spaces left. I'm talking to the venue just now to see how many we can squeeze in comfortably and fit people in there. But if you and I have already been in touch about that event, normally I would ticket it. But just the amount of people that are in, the amount of patrons that I've got coming in, for example, they're prioritised, that they're going to be here for the festival weekend anyway, then that's the people that I'm prioritising, because I cannot get a venue big enough to deal with ticketing or advertising at a venue. So we can fit 54 people comfortably in. I'm currently sat at 50. That's without putting a single ticket out there. Everybody that's on the list, I'll be in touch with you over the course of the next week, and we'll get everything sorted out so that you know what's happening. Again, it's one of these things that I do my best, and it's tough because you need a venue that will allow you to free pour. You need a venue that will do food, that will give you clean and comfortable surroundings, that will give you a big enough space. And that's a difficult thing to find. If you've got any ideas, otherwise it's kind of going to just have to be a capped event. Maybe that answer is I need to do more of them in a year. Maybe do one earlier in the year. Justin Wan is saying, remember to hit the like, and he's bought me a dram as well to remind you all. Thank you all so much. 384 of you in. I can't see what the likes are. I would need to pull up a window to see that. 123 just now. Doesn't matter. Only hit the like if you do genuinely like it. I've not even started the topic yet. But the likes help people see that this 2-hour-long vPub that you're enjoying tonight is actually legitimate content. It's tough. It's a tough sell. Somebody came on this week talking about how they didn't understand. And after just sitting through the first one on a relaxed evening, understood it, got it, watching the chat on the replay. And now they're joining live and enjoying it. It's not YouTube content. The YouTube platform is almost incidental. This is just to create a space for us all to get together. And tonight, for me to give my opinions on some whiskies. Jimmy Legs is saying, laughing out loud, I wasn't tired. I was dead. You did very, very well, Jimmy, you and Angie. Whiskey with Molly saying, question 1, what time will Aquaviti start the actual vPub topic? Thank you, Ben. How about now, my friend? How about now? I'll put this Hibiki to the side and I'll reach out to the first dram. It's always difficult to work out what order to do these kind of things in. Usually you start with lower ABV and work to higher ABV. You start by peat content, the less smoky ones, and work up to the most smoky ones. I have a slightly different take on that. I'm a wee bit more relaxed about the kind of peat thing. The ABV thing is definitely a factor, because if you're having kind of higher cast strength, potent ABVs, and then you've got this really quite subtle dram a bit later in the flight, I think that can be affected. It can taste a wee bit watery and light, at least for the first couple of sips. But generally, the peaty thing, I worry less about, especially when you suffer from peat blight like I do, right? Anyway, I'm looking for the wee tear strip on this. I'm going to be breaking the seal on this brand new whiskey. It just came out a couple of weeks ago. It's quite an amazing thing to witness this. I wasn't witnessing it live, but obviously heard about it. The one I've just cracked the seal on is Isle of Harris. This is the Hearach. The Hearach 46% ABV, brand new release, just appeared in the last couple of weeks. Now, we've been waiting on Isle of Harris to do something for a long time now, waiting and waiting, patiently waiting. And finally they did, but they did it in a way that's never actually been done before. This, all of them have got a kind of tear strip on the top, a kind of cork seal here, and I'll try and get that to focus on that there. It's just about to try, then it's on my face. So if I keep my face out of the way, and I'll try, it doesn't matter. That seal at the top says, come on camera, you can do it. I'm going to force it because this says, this has your batch details information. First release, batch 323. There are 4 zeros in front of that 3, which is quite interesting. But regardless, out of 8 batches, I think it was 8 batches were released all on the same day, batches 1 through 8. Quite incredible. All somewhere between 12,000 and 13,000 bottles per batch. This is jaw-dropping amount of whiskey they've just launched onto the market. And now my camera's wondering what to focus on, right? That was going to be an interesting thing, because if you go onto their website, all their online stock is sold out. All 8 batches are sold out. But I see this now. This is still available. If you were to do a quick search online right now, I'm pretty sure you would find it. I've seen it on the shelves in shops, still available for people to buy. So that's a good thing. This is they've held on for long enough now. They finally released it, and they've released it at such a scale that it should be available, as long as you're not picky or fussy about which batch you're actually going to get. I actually got this one through my pal Peter Way over there in Switzerland. He was getting a bottle delivered here. I just asked him if he could get an extra bottle and ship it at the same time, split the shipping costs. It's exactly what happened. So I managed to get this without any effort whatsoever. Fantastic, Peter. Thank you very much, my friend. Let's get it in the glass. Let's see if it's going to make... Oh. A wee bit of a glug noise, but there's quite an awkwardness to that. And I get the sense I'm doing it wrong, because this bottle... If you feel this bottle, there are actually indents in the side of the glass. It looks like it's just kind of straight lines and textures and things. But actually, when you look at it, when you hold it, it feels like there's a thumb print in here. There's an indent in the bottle to help you grab it. And I'm speaking about a right-hand grab here. Don't know if that's intentional. I don't know if all the bottles have those indents. I feel like it must. And there's another slight indent on the other side as well for fingers, it feels like. So it feels like that's very deliberate and designed. Although maybe me pouring it with my left hand, not quite as ergonomic, let's say. Anyway, this is a very, very attractive wee dumpy bottle, right? Very unique. There's nothing else out there looking like this on the shelves right now, I would say. I really want to work out how to use my camera a bit better. Anyway, I think it's pretty, and I think it looks reasonably decent. Doesn't take up too much room in any direction, kind of width-wise or depth, and it's kind of short, so it's going to fit on all our shelves. Pretty enough. Let it breathe in the glass for a bit. What's really quite amazing about this, oh, wow. So this is from Harris, right, which is the Outer Hebrides. This is very, very west coast. But the nose here is super sweet and fruity. Vanilla fruits, white fruit, stone fruits, some clean apple, fresh apple, sweet apple, honeycomb. This is nosing And I hate to do this, but it's nosing like a very typical space cider, which is a surprise to me. Now, of course, we've talked about regionality. We've debunked it in the past and we've celebrated it in the past, and it really doesn't need to conform to anything. It's a brand new whiskey. But I didn't expect it to be that sweet. This is peated. It's lightly peated. But I'm not getting much smoke. I bet if I gave it to my family, my kids, asked them to nose it, my wife asked her to stick her nose in a glass, she would maybe pick up some smoke. Let's see if we get any smoke on the empty glass. Anyway, let's leave it to breathe and open up for a wee bit. This is a neck pour, and I'll show you something that is quite interesting about it. This is the box. This is the box, for want of a better word, but it just unfolds like this, and in this hollow that's been cut out, the bottle just kind of sits in the hollow. I'm going to pick this up very nervously because, you know, it's not the most kind of secure feeling thing. It's never fallen out on me or anything. I can tilt it to the side. It seems to be okay. But I don't feel like this is the type of box that's going to sit around on a lot of shelves. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe some people will quite enjoy it. I think it's interesting. I don't love it. I'm not a fan of it. If it's their first releases, they maybe have to have something. This is quite fun, but it's not particularly practical to me. Let me show you why. When I picked mine up, the glue separated here, and originally I thought it was a magnet, but it's not. It's just it's kind of a push fit square here. If I'll pop it out, there we go. So that's supposed to be glued on to here, and then it'll push in and it'll pop in and hold into place. That's not the type of thing that you want to have your valuable whiskey held in place by, I would say. That said, the outer packaging that it was delivered in was very robust. No problem with it at all. It just got a bit fiddly and footery when I got it out of that. So I'll leave that off to the side because I do want to criticise the general packaging a wee bit more further before I've even tasted the whiskey. I will say one thing that's very cool about it. This, and I think this must come from the cutout here. You know, it feels like it's from the exact same cardboard as this kind of big, huge space that they've cut out for the bottle. But they give you this kind of cool coaster. And I will use this. I will not throw that away. This kind of foldy piece of paper that, because the glue's failed on it, it's can't even stay in a square anymore. That's just gone straight in the bin. There's wee stories and nice images and things on it, and it comes with a wee booklet slid inside as well. And it's all fantastic. It's all of the story about, it's very much focused on the local people in Hearach, exactly what you would want to hear about, you know, a distillery on there, given employment. It talks very much about how much they want to do by hand. I'm not sure they're at Springbank levels on that, but they're certainly employing folk there in the distillery, which is fantastic. There's lots of wee stories here in English and Gaelic, actually. All very cool, but we probably don't need that every time. That's just a kind of first release thing. My biggest problem with the packaging here is, with all of the real estate on the outside and the inside of that box, on the front label and the back label, the booklet that they put inside it, everything is just story, 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 and very little about what makes up this whiskey. I can find it out if I go on the website, but when you've got all of that, that's forgivable though. What I don't think is forgivable is that there is no mention of colour. Is this natural colour? Can I hold this up and say, ooh, and enjoy and appreciate the colour because it's natural and it's not to a spec? And there's no mention of whether it's chill filtered or not. Now, we're reassured because if we do some digging online, we do indeed discover that it is natural colour and it is non-chill filtered, and 46% ABV should reassure us of that as well. But why is that not on the packaging? Why? How can you be making those mistakes in 2023? Because it is a mistake. Because for everybody that's out there that doesn't care whether it says that or not, there's somebody that really does care. It's 2023. This is craft quality flavour forward, integrity forward, natural Scotch whisky? Tell us that it is. Celebrate it. Quite intrigued with the nose on this. Really fruity. An interesting kind of popcorn, caramel, sweet popcorn. Looking for a coastal element or a salty element, given its location there on Harris, but no, I would have to say this is much more, this is a softer character. Let's go on, let's have a wee sip. Okay, a couple of things straight away. Very tidy for a young release. I think we're looking at, they waited until this was 5 years old. So we know the makeup of this to be minimum 5 years old across all the 8 batches, I believe. I suggest to you that you're probably going to be quite happy considering this to be even older than that, maybe anywhere up to about. So there is a vibrance here, there is a spirit element to this here, but there's no way you would sit and say, oh, this is young whiskey, this is a brand new first release on a new whiskey. This has already got plenty of maturity out there to be enjoyed by most whiskey appreciators. No problem at all. If you consider people, even people that are used to spending 20, 25 pounds on a blend, there is much more kind of flavour and form and body and shape to this than there are on cheaper blends. Even at 46%, you're going to be able to put this in front of anyone, and I think they'd be quite happy. This is a wee bit reminiscent in style to Nicknean. This is much more similar to the Nicknean style. Another Western Highlander that's quite soft. Not picking up any of the peat smoke on this. Not yet. I hear it's 12 to 14 ppm, but that'll be malt rather than what's in the bottle, I believe. It's not a peaty whiskey. Wee bit of a umami type thing on the finish, close to the end. But I think that's what's taken me towards that kind of almost popcorn type thing. Very gentle, very easy. Even soft. Now, I'm not going to make any comments or anything on complexity or that type of thing. That's the kind of thing that would develop as you get a chance to sit with it and understand it. As the level in the bottle drops, as things breathe a little bit, you can give it more time in the glass. This is very much a first impression. This is softer whiskey than I expected. You know, there's no worm tubs going on here. There's no direct firing of the stills. You're not expecting a full. It's not. This isn't lag. This isn't. But I think I expected something that was a bit more rough, a bit more, and I don't mean rough. I mean a bit more bold. I mean a bit more robust. That's the word I'm looking for. This is just very, even close to elegant, soft. Going to leave it there. Keep the glass in front of it. Yeah, I don't know what to make of that. Now, there are 8 batches. From what I can gather, looking at things online, the website says, we don't want to kind of really feed people tasting notes, but then immediately follows it up with tasting notes. And I think there's notes for each of the batches. But it looks like the differences are more to do with how these batches have been curated and put together, how much time they were married in cask, how much time from disgorging, marrying, vatting, whatever it was, and eventually being bottled. That's kind of what makes up. So what they've been doing is they've been putting out the batch and keeping it, putting out a batch and keeping it, and making sure that they had enough in order to sate demand. Unless you're a completist and you were one of these people that went out and spent £65 8 times over in order to have 1 through 8 all batches, which would be crazy. That's kind of crazy to me, especially if they're all very, very similar to this. I think that my initial impression for Isle of Harris is that they're making a very clean, very, very fruity, good quality, elegant style of whiskey that's going to do well maturing. The fact that they've got it this drinkable at 5 years old is a huge achievement. Wonder if it could do with a wee bit more of a, I don't know, body robustness, something just to be a wee bit more vocal in some respects. Still, no bad start. And I think I was right to start off with a Hearach. I think the other ones that I'm going to be trying tonight are going to be potentially a wee bit more shouty, a wee bit more bold. Lee J is saying, Roy, sorry, but the week's catching up with me. We'll catch the rest on replay along with Sundays. Well, you definitely need your sleep, buddy. And you can't be coming up here to Glasgow in a couple of weeks' time feeling tired as well. So get as much sleep as you possibly can. Greg's Whisky Guide is saying, so you would say it's quite different from, say, Ardnamurchan? Oh, it's not even the same. Absolutely. Ardnamurchan is, standard releases are much more peaty than this, much more peat forward. They're much more kind of robust. They're much more coastal, that kind of outdoor whiskey. Ardnamurchan's maybe a wee bit jaggier as well, a bit more shouty. This is a purer, cleaner experience, a softer experience. I think if I was sipping this blind, I think I'd be in the neighbourhood of a 10-year-old Speyside. Yeah, I do. Maybe I need to sip it in contrast with a 10-year-old Speyside. See how we got on. It reminded me of an Annock Rutter, a Rude. So you're getting, Andrew Butler, you're getting some peat on there. That's super interesting. Very typical of my peat blight. You know, I've just come from the Hibiki. There's a wee bit of peated whiskey in the Hibiki, but not much. It's not a smoky whiskey by any stretch of the imagination. But maybe what I'll do is put a wee plastic topper on top of it, let the aromas build up inside the glass and see if I can get a burst of smoke. What usually betrays any smoke in there, even if it's light, is in the empty glass. You can pick up a lot of smoky notes from an empty glass. Whiskey with Molly saying all very similar from what I've tried. So there's Ben's suggesting that they're all kind of more on a similar theme. All the batches. Gordon Fraser, very similar to Rassy Tòir. Oh, interesting, Gordon. I wouldn't even put this. Rassy is much more kind of, in my experience, cask-driven, whether it's that kind of wine, the Chinkapin, whatever it may be. George Ellis saying Harris may be using narrow cuts in early batches to keep it clean while young. It could be, George. It's a good shout. Narrower cuts, maybe. But I think that's what I'm looking for, is something that's... And it's my issue, isn't it, that I consider West Coast whiskies to be a wee bit more kind of vocal and bold. And if you look at the OSWAs, if you look at the proliferation of West Coast whiskies and much more bold flavour styles, I think that that's also true. That betrays quite a large portion of our community as well. Greg is saying, so that makes it my idea of, is it a new distillery, right? It is definitely a new distillery. This is a brand new whiskey, a brand new batch. If you'd tried Harris before now, you were either sampling your own private cask or you were maybe getting some new make or something like that. This is their first crafted product. Until this release, for the whiskey buying public, it did not exist. Maybe splash some on your hands and rub them dry aquavitae. Gives away the peat for me as well. Well, unless you've got the soapy hands, but I should be okay with that Whiskey Vault. Let's give it a wee bash. It's one of the tricks I've used in the past. I never get much from this either. Oh, you know what? Maybe, but I'm going to suggest, just because I'm looking for it, maybe like a distant whiff of kind of almost burnt grass type note. I wonder if it's the Hibikis. It's all kind of sherry cast now when I know it's the Hibiki. Okay. First impressions with the Hearach. We've got a few to be getting on with. So let's tear into the next one, which are definitely peaty. The ones I'm going to do now is a trio. Now, all of these whiskies are from Glenallachie. Glenallachie's been around since the 60s, what, 1967 or something like that. Of course, it's had its ups and downs over the years in its relatively young life, but brand new vigor and life was brought into that distillery when Billy Walker and his buddies got involved back in, I think, as far back as 2017 now. Billy Walker takes over Glenallachie and starts to change everything. So what he's doing there is he's not only trying to recover and make the best proposition from all the whiskey he's inherited there, previously blend filler whiskey, if we're brutally honest about it, by recasking, regaging, sampling everything, taking stock, but he also gets to work straight away making his own whiskey at Glenallachie. To all intents and purposes, that's absolutely new whiskey. We heard at the time how much experimentation was going on there, especially one of the biggest things that they were doing was stretching out fermentation times, slowing down the process, making everything much slower. But also in 2018, after only being in there about a year, they started to make this. They've called it Meikle Tòir, which is apparently Gaelic for the big pursuit. And they've brought out 4 expressions. Now, one of them is a 71 highly densely peated expression called the Turbo. That was the smallest outturn. I didn't get a bottle of that. There's not much of it around, it seems. But it was very, very easy to get a hold of the sherry one here, 48% ABV. The Chinkapin one, 48% ABV. And the original, 50% ABV. Some interesting things happening here already. We've got new whiskey. Now, I know that a lot of you will say, no, wait, last year, Billy Walker brought out a 4-year-old Glenallachie peated, and that was the first example of his style, and I agree, you're absolutely right. That was the first time that we got to taste Billy Walker's efforts at making his own whiskey at Glenallachie. I get 1 dram of that, and I never got a bottle, and it's long sold out. That's not the case with these. This is the sherry one that I'm pouring first. We'll try these alongside each other. Just pour wee pours, just enough to do a wee comparison here. All of these carry an age statement. All of these carry, like last year's 4-year-old, a single-digit age statement. All of these carry a 5-year age statement. As we look at the Chinkapin one here at 48% ABV, we see the gold 5 there. That's confidence. That's to be celebrated. That's transparent. That's wonderful to see. Almost wonder, why didn't Harris put a wee age statement on there? Especially if they're going to tell us that it's at least 5 years old. They all have their own reasons, right? Fine. But I think that's good. I think that's to be celebrated by the folks at Glenallachie. What I also want to applaud them for, non-chill filtered, natural colour. It's written here on the label. You should be able to see that right in my finger. No colour added, non-chill filtered. At 48% ABV, that's what we've come to expect, of course. But it's nice for them to share that with us. All of these whiskies are fairly dark. They are the type of colour of malt whiskey that you might look at and be suspicious that they have added a wee bit of colour. But because they've put that statement on there, we know that they have not, and we can therefore enjoy the rich russet red of that sherry one, the kind of bright copper of the Chinkapin one, and the almost kind of gold hues of this, the original. The original and the Chinkapin are only slightly different in colour, but the sherry one is clearly a good few shades darker. So I'll put them out in front of them so I can keep track of the ones that I'm sipping. But these are fairly heavily peated, 35 ppm, we're told on these. 35 ppm, that's not as high as our beg, but it's somewhere in the ballpark of a Lagavulin, say. In terms of malt spec, at least. 3 Meikle Tòirs. All the specs there, all the check boxes are there. Age statement, 48% ABV on two, 50% ABV on the other, fantastic. Chill filtration, check, it's non-chill filtered. And colour added, no dye in these bottles, fantastic. Natural colour, and they tell us so. Let me tell you why I think I want to be able to celebrate these, why I'm desperate for these whiskies to be delicious too. The only thing left for these whiskies to be is delicious. Because these are plentiful, widely available in £50. Now, some of you might balk immediately and say, sorry, Roy, £50 for a 5-year-old whiskey? I put it to you that when this whiskey turns 6, 7, 8 years old, I think that they will still be trying to bring it out at £50, all other things being equal. If you consider what the 4-year-old came out at last year, much smaller outturn, completely different thing, a toe in the water, you might suggest. But I think it was going from memory about £75, £80 or something, too expensive for a 4-year-old whiskey. This is a big outturn. They've really tried to get whiskey on lips, get it out there and get people tasting it. And they have not made it a collector's piece. These are custom bottles. They're pretty straightforward, but they're not tall rounds. You know, they've put it in a fairly nice bottle. I'm not a big fan of these earth tones. You know, I think the branding is a wee bit insipid, I would say, if I had to be critical. If you look closely at the bottles with the gold on there, you know, there's nice highlights, there's nice details about the bottle. When you get up close to it, it's actually quite a handsome thing. But I think maybe the shelf presence isn't particularly bold. But that's me being petty. If they're bringing good quality drinking whiskies at 50 quid, the whiskey that did not exist until these releases, I'm interested. Let's start with the Chinkapin, the one in the middle. 48% ABV, 35% 35 ppm peat. So immediately, big blast of burnt toffee, caramel. There's a wee puff of smoke on this, but this is not what you would call powerful peaty whiskey. This is the type of whiskey that you could give to somebody who doesn't really like peated whiskey, and I think they would get on with this fine based on the nose alone. This does smell of popcorn. Wee bit of maple syrup in this, so you get a theme here. I think most of the notes I'm getting from this are oak notes, cask notes. Smoke aside, toffee caramel, syrup, fruit. Maybe you're thinking the fruit is maybe a toffee apple type thing. No, there's some ripe fruit here. Some okay, maybe this is a kind of wee fermenty thing coming in. Some ripe fruits. Coat the glass, see if it can help a wee bit. Aye, some overripe satsuma, sweet citric orange oils. But everything is sweet and kind of the syrupy end of the scale. Smoke is not even kind of electric level. Maybe just a wee bit more. Maybe just a wee bit more obvious than, let's say, a Bamor. Lightly peated, savoury in style rather than smoky. Let's go up against. Let's try the sherry one alongside. Okay, much more smoke. Absolutely more smoke. Amplified, I would suggest a wee bit with sherry casks here. A wee bit more, and be very, very careful. I'll say sulphur with a very small s because I didn't get a blast of kind of matches and farts and eggs, but I did get a sense of being outside bonfire, fireworks display type thing. Definitely sherry cask is very nutty, is a nutty whiskey, definitely. Coat the glass a wee bit. Dark cherry. Dark chocolate. There's a funky, odd note to this too. It's not sulfur, but it's definitely sulfurous. It is like you're witnessing some kind of fireworks. Well, looking for fruit. Can't get past a kind of red berry cherry type thing. Chocolate covered cherries as well. There is a chocolatey feel to this. 48%. And finally, the one that's slightly higher ABV is the original, they're calling it. And the original, at that 50% ABV, is using bourbon virgin oak, rye casks. So this is quite a mix in the original. Bourbon, virgin oak, and rye. Searching for rye, not obvious. I think this is more my cup of tea here. I think this is much more attractive to me. And I think there's more balance to this one. This has got some of the kind of youth and spirit about it that I love. I know that not everybody likes a spirity whiskey. I do tend to love spirity whiskies. This is the most spirit forward. So despite there being some virgin casks in the mix here, I think the cask touch here is much more gentle. There are fruits here, but they're orchard fruits. I can definitely pick up. There's not a lot of spirit in these other two. My goodness, the smoke is here. I think this one's probably the most balanced, the most appealing to me on the nose. Let's just dive in and see. We'll start with this one here. Lots of flavour and personality, youth. Still some youth there. You can feel it just around the edges of the tongue, but not off-putting. This is quite dense. Apple, crisp apple, green apple, clean apple, but it's like you're enjoying an apple outside. There is just an outside feel to all three of these whiskies, based on nosing alone, and certainly on this palate so far. I would consider there must be a decent chunk of refill here. It just says aged in bourbon, virgin oak, and rye casks. Maybe it's first fill bourbon, but I think that maybe it's just the fact that it's still 5 years old. I think there's still a lot of the spirit here. It is smoky, but it's completely in check. I think you could pour this for people who don't really love particularly smoky whiskies, and I think they could go on with it fine. Neck pour, of course. Let's go into the Chinkapin. Oh wow, this is the syrup. This is the popcorn. This is the much sweeter thing. Toffee caramel, maple syrup. You know, there's just a kind of pancake vibe to this whole thing. Breakfast, everything is sweet about this. Everything is sweet. So smoky and sweet. Okay, that's a surprise. Much, you wouldn't say dry, but much lighter on the palate. I expected like a big syrupy, sweet, sugar, vanilla bomb. It is vanilla forward, definitely. There's lots of vanilla here. But that's much more light touch on the palate than I expected, and it's smokier too. The finish is super smoky. Let's go back to this Harris. No, the smoke's still hiding from me. I need a bit more time with that one. But there's no hiding from the smoke on this. Fresh smoke, outdoor smoke, very outdoor in feel. I was a wee bit nervous that this Chinkapin, so this Chinkapin, this was probably going to be virgin as well. Matured on American virgin oak. This characterful single malt evokes a smoked spiciness. It's definitely spicy on the palate. That suggests that all of this is in virgin Chinkapin oak. So there's not been a previous fill in this at all. There's been no bourbon in this. So all of these kind of sweet syrupy notes I'm getting are cask notes. But there is a kind of sweet citric oil thing that makes me think that surely that's in the spirit. This is apple orchards, and this is definitely citrus. I can see why they've done peated whiskies here. I think they need the peat. So the active casks are tempering the young spirit, and the peat is adding an extra dimension in there. I hope that some of this spirit is sitting quietly in refill casks and less active casks to kind of give us a wee display of what they're actually doing in the future. This is very typical of a modern style, a modern take on whiskey. Very typical of what the practice is at Glenallachie as well. Nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with it at all. A lot of people love it. There's huge fans out there for Glenallachie and everything that they've done with the spirit that they inherited. And obviously this is what they're doing in their newer spirit. Yeah, this sherry one I just can't get past an almost kind of cherry, raspberry, but there's a kind of chocolate feel to things too. Black pepper. Smoke is here. And there is a kind of funky edge to this, and I don't want to say sulfur because it's off-putting to so many people, but we're not talking about, it's not that horrible thing. It's almost like a savory outdoor thing. Sherry casks do something to whiskey, and this is PX and Oloroso casks. It says wisps of peat smoke on this. I think there's quite a nice dollop of peat smoke on this. This would be an interesting one to use in a blind. Very interesting. I think this is a type of whiskey that you could, so this is PX, Oloroso, used together. And you hear a lot of people talking about PX, but we have to remember probably often when some of the people that complain about PX are often the ones that wish we were back in the old days of using Paxaret and things like that. But Paxaret was actually made mostly from PX back in the day. PX, when it's used judiciously, can be fantastic. And I think this is good use of PX. Oloroso, that dry, spicy sherry that it can bring, especially if it's in European oak. We don't know. It's probably more likely to be American oak, of course. There's a nice balance to the sherry use here. This is bizarrely becoming my pick. Am I going to seriously pick the sherry expression out of three? The peat, the sherry casks are working well with the spirit. I don't think anybody's going to pick this up and decide it's a 12-year-old or 15-year-old or anything like that. I think the spice and a wee bit of prickle and a wee bit of kind of voice from the spirit is there in all of these. But I think for me, the one that, and I'm surprised to say this, Chinkapin's a vanilla bomb. You know, this is good. I'm sipping this. I'm enjoying it. I'm jumping back in. It's quite Moorish. But this is I think the Chinkapin's a single pour for me. So dryness too. I think that's what's making me go back again. It's quite a drying on the finish. And the original, the one I was most intrigued with on the nose. No, this is the best. This is Scotch. This is the Scotch whiskey that we can recognise. Yes, there's a bit of spirit on there. More spirit than on the other two, no doubt. Maybe with the extra ABV, 50% ABV as well. This is clean. This is switching about. There's complexity here already. This is asking you to guess whether the flavours you're tasting, the fruits and things, it's quite orchard fruit, but this is asking you to guess, is this from the spirit or is this from the cask? This is not obvious. The other two are much more clear statements of what they are. But that original one is much more balanced. And all of these, I can tell as I'm speaking to you right now that there's smoke and smokiness and quite a lot of it on the finish. So while it's quite approachable when you nose it and it feels like the smoke is soft, I think at 5 years old, the smoke is actually quite potent when you sit with it. So I got much more animated and excited over those three whiskies than I expected to. There is density here. You wouldn't call them, I don't think, particularly robust or heavy or full-bodied or oily or anything, but I think there is integrity and density here. I think I'm surprised at the diversity here, the three different flavors. If I think you could maybe pick out you were sipping the same spirit if you sat and had them alongside each other, but the differences are quite remarkable. But the profile, it's not just kind of picking out little incremental differences. There are three very clear defined profiles here between these three. Chinkapin is probably my least favourite out the three. It doesn't make it a poor whiskey, not in any way. It's just popcorn. It's like smoky popcorn and reminds me of kind of breakfast time, pancakes and syrup, but it's smoky, it's outdoor. It's tasty, delicious, sweet. I think it's my least favourite of the three. I think the sherry cask is only just slightly nudged out by the balance from the original. When I say balance, what I'm talking about there is that the spirit has just been allowed to kind of stretch a little bit more, just be a wee bit more vocal, feels like to me, in my opinion. But the sherry cask is, despite me suggesting that there's some sulphur notes there, which there are, but it's not rotten. It's not the awful side of sulphur that we sometimes experience from sherry casks. I think it's the sherry casks and the smoke working together to bring an almost savoury aspect. And it does give me the sense of, you know, being outside bonfire, fireworks. 50 quid a bottle. Brand new whiskey. I think that this has been designed to be inexpensive, a straightforward bottle, make it affordable, make it integrity forward, make it as flavoursome as we can at 5 years old, put the 5-year-old age statement on there, put it out, see how we're doing, get feedback, charge a reasonable price for it, £50. Because I'll be honest with you, the cost of making a 5-year-old whiskey versus a 10-year-old whiskey, there's really not much in it. It's just patience and how much of it is left. The cost per litre of maturation of whiskey isn't the issue. It's getting the cash flow that's the issue. £5 whiskey, there's a lot more of it around in 10-year-old whiskey, but I hope that Meikle Tòir as a brand continues and continues at that price point. That is good value sipping whiskey. This is not the type of whiskey that's going to score high in reviews. This is not going to get everybody running around going crazy. This is just legitimately good, straightforward, take it or leave it style presentation in whiskey. And I'm glad to have all of these. And at £50 a bottle, I think I'm going to start talking about these, recommend these. All based on a neck pour. A couple of drams come in. I don't want to have missed these. Jimmy Legg bought me a dram. He said, I'll pay you not to pick the sherried one. Well, now I want to pick the sherry one, Jimmy. Listen, it's not my favoured profile, but occasionally I taste a sherried whiskey and I go, I love it. That was, I thought I was going to pick that as my favourite. Going back to the one that's just the original, I think there's a wee bit more balance. If I'm going to take one home and put it on the shelf, just for me, I would take the original. However, I'll admit this, Jimmy, if I was going to bring one home that I was going to share with friends and get people to taste it and try it, I think I might be tempted to go with the sherry one. Darth Kermit is in. Now, Darth Kermit, I met you, didn't I? I met you very recently. He said, I just finished a Meikle when I bumped into you. Fantastic. We did meet. We met in the Bonaccord, didn't we? Good to have you, buddy. Good to have you in here. I wonder which one you tried and did you like it? And Jamie Love is saying, get yourself a wee dram on holiday. Thank you, Jamie. Such a nice gesture. I'll raise my favourite to all of you, to Jimmy Legg, to Darth Kermit, and to Jamie Love, and say thanks for your drams, guys. Thank you. I'm travelling on holiday with my brother and his family. I guarantee you there will be drams shared. Ben is saying, what's better, Meikle Tòir or turntable blended? Ooh, that's kind of apples and oranges, right? That's not comparing the same. I think the Meikle Tòir are much more bold and flavour forward. There's much more hooks there. I think the turntable, they're around about the same price, right? I think the turntable blends are much more crafted, much more a wee bit like the Hibiki I started it out with tonight. So it's a mood type thing. If I was to pick one, I maybe pick the turntable, but I don't know. Spoke to Billy Walker, says Daniel McAvoy, at the launch event, and his personal favourite of the Meikle Tòir is the Chinkapin. Well, I think I would recommend the Chinkapin for those of you with the sweetest tooth, based on my tasting notes tonight. I hope that came across. Throat's starting to go a wee bit. Hope it holds out. A question, sorry, I got that, didn't I? Says Ari the Fly is saying, Roy, all can do that 50 quid for. I'm not sure I understand what you mean, but I think if you're talking about they're all worthy of the £50 price point, I'm going to say aye. I think they could have put these out there a bit more expensive, but they're not doing it for the here and now. They're doing it for the long game. They're building a brand. And I think to build a brand, Billy Walker knows that he's got to give people some fair pricing. He's got to earn premiumization rather than just demand it through charging an exorbitant price. Missed the Starting Gun has bought me a dram. That's a brand new name, and it looks like I've missed. First time I've welcomed you in, buddy. First time catching a live vPub. Good. Love what you do. Thank you so much. Looking forward to the OSWAs this year, and cheers. Cheers to you. Thank you so much. Missed the Starting Gun. I feel like that could be a name for me. I'm always missing the Starting Gun. Thank you for your dram. And welcome to the vPub. Justin want to say, do you think they should have released a whiskey under Glenallachie branding? It's something I wanted to mention because I think what they're trying to do is when they brought out a Glenallachie peated, there's maybe some people last year looked at the Glenallachie and said, oh, let me try that. And it was this peated whiskey like nothing they'd ever had from Glenallachie before. I think what they're trying to do is just kind of not trash the Glenallachie brand on an experimental outturn. It just makes perfect sense. There's a lot of cost involved, of course, in creating a brand from scratch. Meikle Tòir, right? It's never been around before. There's a lot of work goes into that. However, if it doesn't work out, and if it's not well received, they've not thrown Glenallachie under the bus, have they? They can just quietly draw away from it and go back to the drawing board. I have to say, though, despite not being a fan of the aesthetic, I'm a fan of the strategy, and I'm certainly a fan of the authenticity, the transparency, and the straightforward delivery of the product. I think it's very worthwhile. I think it's pretty good. Honestly, I think you could go out and spend your 50 quid on any of these and you wouldn't feel like you've been burned. There's going to be enough of it out there behind bars and things like that for you to be able to try first. Know that these are not seismic whiskies, but they are straightforward and they are honest. I also think that they're a wee bit modern and very typical of what's coming out of Glenallachie, except for the peated part. That's really quite different. So all of those caveats, I think all of them are fair game for recommendation. And Ben has bought me a dram to say, do we judge it on now or the promise of what new whiskey can deliver in the future? I sometimes think that gets blurred. Enjoy the holiday, Roy. Ben, I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to get to a point tonight that hopefully I'll make some kind of concise summary, but we'll wait to see how the whiskies potentially change that. Thanks for the dram, buddy. Looking forward to hanging out with you over the weekend of the Glasgow Whisky Festival. Do you know what we need to do? We need to get Welsh Toro out of his wee spot, wherever he is, wherever he's hanging out, and get him up to Glasgow for a weekend. Maybe he's too busy on trips to Spain and things like that as well. I've only ever met Welsh Toro online. It would be good to see him in real life. Justin Wan is saying, I see that makes sense. Next, Excess to Scotch is in saying, just got on. I love the vPub. Thanks for doing this, Roy. Greetings from the Netherlands. I think it's, your name is Klaus. I'm not very sure. I feel like it's Excess to Scotch if it's Klaus. I think I've guessed at it before. Let me know if it is, and if you're doing okay over there in Holland, in the Netherlands, sorry, what he thinks of the driest whiskey available for a reasonable price. Ask Aquaviti what he thinks is the driest whiskey available for a reasonable price. I love dry whiskey. I love dry finishes. I love when I get a dry kind of, I love when it leaves your palate asking for more. For a reasonable price, I'm going to be predictable and say Ardnamurchan. Okay, I'm going to leave those there in front of the bottles. I'm going to come back to them if I have to, but I'm going to move on now. And I'm going to try one that I'm really quite excited to try. This is from Holyrood, and this is quite a recent purchase for me. I was hopeful that I could get my hands on it, but immediately I've got some kind of, this is kind of, there's no way, if you hold this bottle, I guarantee you, the first thing you'll do is look to check to see if it's 70 cl. I think you'll do that because it's very light. It's almost like the size of a beer bottle, like if you go into an Indian restaurant and they give you a 660 ml bottle, you know, for to have alongside your curry, like a big Cobra or a Kingfisher or something. You know, that's what it feels like. It doesn't feel like it's quite the full 70 cl, but I think this is lightweight glass. So I think they've gone for a kind of eco approach here. This is a bit more understated, a bit more subtle, a bit more kind of light. I have to say I quite like the aesthetic, but it does have it does look like a bottle of beer to me rather than a bottle of whiskey. Obviously the dark brown bottle as well. But Holyrood are just calling this Arrival. This is the first whiskey, legitimate whiskey, to come out of Edinburgh in a century. It's quite amazing to consider. First single malt whiskey, at least. 46.1% ABV they've gone for. It is a legitimate 70 cl bottle. Let's see, do they tell us on this that it's natural colour? It says release number 1, bottled in 2023. Now, there is a wee barcode on here that we can scan for more information, but I'm telling you, I tried that and it doesn't do anything. If anything, it actually gives us less information. Maybe they're developing that, maybe they're still working on it, but it gives us less information than what's actually on the bottle label. It just tells us, well, it actually tells us one more bit of information. It tells us that it's £67 to buy a bottle. So a wee bit pricier than the 65, I think, for the Harris. Certainly pricier than any of the examples from Glenallachie and the Meikle Tòirs. But, you know, this is the inaugural from Holyrood. This is quite an anticipated release. Now, this is going to be younger than the Harris, certainly younger than the Meikle Tòirs, because this is from Holyrood, and they only started, I think, in 2019. Okay, could be pop, and I'm pretty confident we will get a glug from this one. Just the best noise in the world, right? Oh, quite a bit darker. Now, I'm pretty certain that this is natural colour. Holyrood is not going to do what they do at Holyrood and release something that's anything other. But let me ask, the geeks that came before us, Ralphie, the geeks that came before Ralphie, Malt Maniacs, the geeks that came before the Malt Maniacs back in the 90s and the 80s, and they were asking for natural whiskey. Somebody mentioned earlier tonight that Cragganmore that they got to try at the Bastards Ball. I think it was Martin Fielder. Said, I've tasted natural cast strength Cragganmore. It's amazing. Why can't we get more of this? People were trying that away back then and saying, what's it going to take for us to get closer to this in our whiskey drinking? Stop dilution, stop chill filtering, stop colouring, stop engineering, stop footering about with malt whiskey and bring it as natural as you possibly can. Great. All of these producers, I am absolutely convinced, are doing this. So why are they releasing it and not telling us on the bottle that they're doing that? Why does this not tell us anywhere on the packaging that this is natural whiskey? Maybe it does. Look at this really small text. Arrival is our first single malt whiskey. This release embodies who we are, our city, and our innovative approach to whiskey making. It is our first step on a journey of curiosity and exploration. There's even smaller text there, but I'm sure that's just legal obligation. Enjoy responsibly. Holyrood Distillery, made by Edinburgh. Single malt Scotch whisky product of Scotland. It doesn't tell me anywhere that it's natural. 46.1, you would have to hope that it is. It's really quite dark here. I know that this is quite a vatting from PX, from Oloroso, from First Fill Bourbon. There's even a bit of rum cask in here. So my initial nose, I'll just say it outright before I go back in again. The nose is all fermentation. Really quite ripe, bold fruits, bready notes, sweet cakes and breads and pastries, almost like soaked sponge. All of those kind of notes that in my experience tends to be when a whiskey's had a lot of attention or potentially quite a long fermentation. Very fermenty. It's almost like Bladnoch or Daftmill in a nose, but richer, maybe bolder than Daftmill, closer to Bladnoch. But we know that this is only 3-year-old whiskey. 2019, I think they started. 2019. This is like cake mix. Obviously, I'm kind of just racing to the things that are quite unique. I could sit here talking about much more generic kind of whiskey flavors. What I'm trying to do is pick out things that are. This is really, really the closest that I've nosed to this. That's get this much fermentation flavor in it is probably something like a Dornoch. Really quite distinctive, really quite dense, really quite rich. Booze-soaked sponge cake. Overripe bananas. Christmas table, trifle, that kind of. Every flavour note that I can pick out of this is like a booze-soaked version of it. And I think that's all to do with the fermentation. Let's go on and have a wee sip. Wow. A word that I didn't use in any of the ones I've had previously so far, and it might end up, when I go back on a second visit, it might happen, but it's happening right now, and there's a lot going on here. This is a complex whiskey. This is nuts that this is only 3 or 4 years old. And I cannot tease whether these are spirit flavors that I'm picking out of this or cask. So let's just try and break it down. This is gingerbread. This is dense, ridiculously long finish, fully flavored whiskey. Good grief. That's incredible. That's incredible. I know that at Holyrood they're doing crazy things. They're messing around with barley. They're doing heritage grain. They're doing chocolate malt and all of these kind of things. When it gets to yeast, they're messing around with the yeast and all sorts of different yeast varieties and things. I don't know how they're keeping track of all the crazy things they're doing at Holyrood, because it's not a huge scale distillery. It's still fairly small. But that is... everything I've sipped so far has met expectation. I am pleased to have all of those bottles here. Genuinely very happy. That is compelling. That's completely different. I think it's only about 8,000 bottles, but I don't know if my glance betrayed my thoughts there. Going to need another bottle of this. I'm trying to think what else I've got on the shelf that's kind of like this. Imagine maybe one of the kind of really yeast-forward Loch Lomans. But even then, I think there's more richness to this. There's kind of maybe more cask development in this. The finish is so long now. I've got this kind of treacle toffee thing on the finish now. Spice, that ginger spice comes back. Did I mention ginger already? But it's not sharper. It's just, well, it's like a warm ginger. It's ginger, yeah, ginger beer. My only sad thing about this is that this is the one that's going to be hardest to get hold of, because there was only 8,000 bottles of it come out. However, my point, and I hope that you've picked this up tonight, is that these inaugural bottles, I'm here to, okay, if I'm lucky enough to source them, I guarantee I'm just going to pop them in front of you. These are getting opened. The Meikle Tòirs, I hope nobody's collecting. The Hearach, there's people going to be collecting that. Arrival, yes, there's people going to be putting it along the side, especially when it's got this wee thing on the side here that tells us that this is a batch number 1, release number 1, bottled in 2023. People are going to keep it. Please, if you've got a bottle of this and you're not that precious, and if you are a whiskey lover and a flavour chaser, open this. What this is going to deliver on flavour for a 3-year-old whiskey is going to knock you on your backside. That's incredible. And I cannot tease whether it's cask driven or spirit driven. I sense that it's both. I thought, well, we know what thought did, don't think do, right? I had to open that and try it. Amazing. Amazing. Rolex is saying, how would you compare this to Glenlivet to the new 2019? So I don't have the 2019 yet. I tried a dram of it, but I was with company. I didn't really get time to sit with it. So the original Glenlivet that I love, the 2018 version, is much fresher and brighter, and white fruit, tropical fruit, grapes, that kind of note, but also very fermenty. So I would say there are some similarities there. This is much more compact and dense. There's much more to tease out about this one. Glenlivet is much brighter and fresher, and maybe even a wee bit more obvious. Whiskey with Molly saying the richness is purely from the wet casks. This is not Holyrood Spirit. So you've tried Holyrood Spirit, and so you tell me then, Ben. Those booze-soaked sponge notes I'm getting, those overripe fruits, I think that's from fermentation. That's my take. Maybe I need to get my hands on some spirit. Willie Buchanan is saying, hi, Roy, still sitting in the background. Fantastic, Willie, good to see you. Hope you, Morag, and Colin are all doing very well. He's saying, any new whiskey not being clear up front, bad idea. That's right. It's not going to put anyone off putting the stats on there, right? Colour, chill filtration. It's just basic these days. Alan Smith is saying, I found the spice a bit much for my taste. That's interesting. So for me, it's definitely coming across as a ginger spice. Ginger is one of those things that's maybe a wee bit, some people just don't like ginger. They don't like it in food. They don't like it to flavour anything. I love ginger. I absolutely adore it. See, that's a flavoursome whiskey. Drew from Arizona is saying we left home for the day of the release 2 Aquavitae. Their arrival sounds like a good one. So you weren't able to pick it up, Drew. It's certainly a different one. Daniel McAvoy is saying this is apparently them playing it safe for their first release. Single cask strength to come by the end of the year, and then some other stuff very soon. Daniel, I'm excited about that. Orange Will is saying, can you put my name down for the Sunday, the blind tasting at Glasgow Whisky Festival, please? I'll put your name down, but I'm going to have to check what emails and things have come in as well, buddy. Let's speak afterwards just to make sure that you can make it. I've made a wee note there, my friend. Bennett's saying Oloroso, but it's Pedro Jimenez, hogsheads, bourbon barrels, and rum barriques. So I knew it was Oloroso PX, bourbon and rum. Fantastic. We don't know if it's first fill bourbon. It probably is. And Rob Halford is saying there is still stock on Master of Malt. Don't ask why. I know this is 11 at night. That's typical of you, Rob, buddy. I know you're working hard. So there you go. There is still some of this available. I'm surprised only 8,000 bottles out there. £67. It's a wee bit pricey. It's not abusive for an inaugural, but it's a wee bit pricier than I would hope. But I think it's quite unique. If you're thinking about buying it as an ornament, I'd just leave it. If you're thinking about buying this to open it and actually taste it, consider it. Brian Storm is saying, just managed to get a bottle of Arrival from Master of Malt. Like to sample, but a bottle, a different prospect. Yes, because of the price, Brian, probably. I think you're going to be okay with it if you're happy to sip it. I have vowed to try it again, says Alan. And the thing is that, Alan, you might be right. You might have this, and you might think, no, there's just too much spice or something. There's too much of the... I probably, with a bit more time, the bottle being a wee bit open, might be able to dig a bit more out of this and find a bit more spice and things like that. It's not peppery spicy. It's not hot. There's no chili in this or anything. It's actually remarkably soft. The spice for me is definitely ginger. It's a fresh, bubbly almost ginger. It makes me think of, when we mix in all those kind of fermenting notes, it makes me think of gingerbread and it's ginger sponges and things of that order. Ben is saying it annoys me. It's not an inaugural that displays the distillery character. Too much cask influence, just made to be nice and sell. Ooh. Strong words from Ben, Whiskey with Molly. I would say I've not tried much of the new Meikle Spirit, but I am prepared to gamble, confidently, strongly gamble, that if I tasted new Meikle Spirit, some of those kind of notes that I've been sharing with you tonight, especially the ones that I think are more kind of fermenty forward, would be in that new Meikle Spirit. There's one more to share with you tonight, but I need to take a deep breath for it. How are we doing for time? We're doing all right. We're doing all right. There are a lot of distilleries out there, a lot of new distilleries, a lot of distilleries that have been brought back to life, Renaissance distilleries. Incumbent distilleries just playing with their ranges and expanding their ranges, and all of it all happening at the same time just means that we're in a place that there's just so much choice. It's ridiculous. But there's been a few distilleries out there that I've been really excited to try, and only to get to the point where the whiskey comes out and I'm just kind of, the air's sucked out of me because and it's almost always price that causes the problem, isn't it? Ryelaw, one of these whiskey mega factories, right? A wee bit like Grant's Girvan complex down at Ailsa Bay. They've got a malt distillery down there, Ailsa Bay, that can make any malt that Grant's could possibly need. Likewise, Ryelaw up in Speyside for Diageo, they can make any. Okay, Ben's getting angry now. He senses what's coming. They can, up in Ryelaw, they can make any whiskey that Diageo needs. But Ailsa Bay started to release their product at a fair price. Quite an interesting product. But it happened at a time, I suppose, that it was maybe ahead. It was certainly pre-pandemic. Big, massive, heavy cork on top and things, and it was just nice, peaty whiskey. They brought out the sweet peat after that. But other than that, we've not really seen much from Grant's down at Ailsa Bay. But Ryelaw finally decided to release a single malt this year as part of the special releases. They've done very well with it. It seems to have sold out in most places, £120 for a 12-year-old Ryelaw. My problem with that is that should have been from their mega complex, mega factory. That should have been the thing that they were going to try and let everybody try. That was going to be their kind of accessible release from the special releases in 2023. And how naive was I? No, a 12-year-old whiskey coming out. Okay, it was at cask strength, £120, and I felt that's a shame. And you know, I just let it go, and I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. But it's a wee bit of a shame that it just, something that I've been looking forward to for years, suddenly is bottled with the same cynicism, honestly speaking, as the rest of the range that came out from special releases this year. We're being tenderized now. We know that that's what to expect from certain producers. When new producers come along, if they come out with a reasonably priced product, we tend to engage. £65 is too expensive in my mind. Maybe I'm just a tight Scotsman. £65, Harris is too expensive. But honestly, how can I criticise it when all 8 batches have sold out in record time online? It remains to be seen how much of that sells out actually in the real world, and how much of it is going to sit around on retail shelves for a bit longer. There was obviously a scrum online. I suspect that the Harris single malt is going to be available for quite a while. I think £65 is just a wee bit pricey. Meikle Tòir, I don't have any argument with that. Somewhere in the order of £45 to £50, thereabouts, for new whiskey of the order of 5 years old. It's kind of following the Ardnamurchan model, isn't it? And I know we all go on about Ardnamurchan, and I keep having to defend this thing. It's not hype, it's consensus. Even the people that say, oh, I'm sick of hearing about Ardnamurchan, they buy a bottle of Ardnamurchan, they go, oh yeah, I get it. It's not for everybody, but it's for the majority, that's for sure. And I think their model they've always led with this integrity. Are they not making money? I suspect that they are making the bare minimum of money that they need to make in order to succeed. So we're willing to pay a wee bit more. 50 quid is fine. 5-year-old whiskey, flavour forward, natural, telling us it's natural, brilliant. £67 for this Holyrood Arrival. It's a wee bit pricey again, but I've just tasted it, and you saw me glance at it and think, maybe I need another bottle. What about a distillery that has a 5-year-old product to share with us that is truly unique for geeks? Fully aimed at geeks. Concepts that it needs geeks to understand. We don't use a traditional mill. We use a hammer mill and we use a mash filter. It's a very different way of doing things. Much more expensive to invest in the first instance, but much more efficient thereafter, and also gives us the flexibility to work with a lot more different styles of grains very easily than just malted barley. That's a fantastic proposition, but it's one that you need to tell the story to geeks. And then they tell you that, yeah, we've been working with barley, malted barley, unmalted barley. We've been working with different grains, and we've been working with rye, and we can handle rye and things. In fact, we're going to bring out a Scotch rye whiskey. Rye whiskey from Scotland? Okay, Arbicki did it. It was super expensive. Nobody spoke about it. It's not there available now. I don't know what's happening. Probably lots of it still kicking around. I don't understand. I tried it. It wasn't that great either. It was ridiculously priced. I knew it was just a curiosity. But I was keen to try this rye. Bruichladdich, I think, beat them a wheat by a nudge, and actually brought out a product that was a wee bit cheaper as well. Rye is part of their regeneration, don't quite remember. Distillery only release. So at the Fife Festival, I got to try the whiskey I'm about to show you. And I tried it, and I deemed it immediately good whiskey. This is good whiskey. I'm excited about this. 53% rye and 47% malted barley in a delicious 5-year-old package. The only question was, how much was it going to be? Now, Inchdairnie is a big distillery. They're making a lot of whiskey, and they're quite unique out there in the landscape in another respect as well, that a lot of the whiskey they make is going to end up being made and sold to go into blends out there, much more kind of traditional, older style. But just because of the experimentation that they can do in their kind of 4 million litre capacity distillery, because of the equipment that they have on site, means that they can produce a product that will excite the whiskey enthusiast too. And they brought it out and they released it. And here it is, Inchdairnie's Ryelaw. Look at this bottle. Look at me through this bottle, right? Quite a compelling thing, and it's actually hurting for me to hold it out at length for a wee while. Okay, I'm exaggerating a bit, but this is a heavy thing. If I was to hold it alongside, oh my goodness, it feels like it's almost double the weight of this kind of Arrival from Holyrood. This is definitely lightweight glass. But this is a big, wieldy, heavy thing. You know, it's got a hammer. You feel this is less a bottle of whiskey and more a weapon. This is Ryelaw. This is 5-year-old Inchdairnie Fife single grain Scotch whiskey. It's presented at 46.3% ABV, and I'm about to uncork it tonight. Now, I know you think I was boycotting this, and that's true. I wanted to pick it up at auction because the smug, annoying idiot in me decided that I'd be able to pick it up at auction cheaper than retail, and I'm not going to pay retail for this. This is one for the geeks. It's one that we should be drinking and talking about. This should not be premiumized at birth like it has been. What happened though is that those whiskies did appear at auction, and £110 bottle of whiskey sold for £70. And I missed the opportunity. There was quite a few bottles at the time, 4 or 5. I didn't get one of the ones at £70, but anybody that's bought this and thinking of flipping it is not in a rush to put it in an auction when they see that their £110 bottle that they bought is only going to get £70 in secondary. I think it's a blunder. This is a nice, big, heavy cork, right? I don't know what this weighs. 150 grams, I'm going to guess. This is a heavy, heavy thing. There's still some of the plastic seal on this, but it's uncorked now. And this is I went out and I bought this. I eventually relented. Why have I gone back on what I said? Because I can't do this theme of a vPub unless I have products like this. What is my job? Oh, nice noise. My job is to buy these. You empower me, you enable me to do it, and to tell you, is it worth it? Or to give my opinion. It's a nice bottle, it's very attractive, no doubt about it, but it's just so over the top. It's just so, who's this pointed to? People are going to be, oh, is this a single malt? Oh, it's very nice. No, it's not single malt. Why is it not single malt? Oh, this is rye, it's single grain whiskey. Oh, what does that mean? I don't know. There are going to be plenty of people out there that are geeky and have the money to afford this, and they just went out and bought it. And I think that they're going to be quite happy with their purchase. I've tried this a number of times. The reason I've gone out and bought this now is because this is exciting whiskey, genuinely exciting whiskey. This is Scottish rye whiskey. Now, rye might not have been something that became to be associated with Scottish whiskey, but rye is definitely something that is part of our ancestry, our farming, our agricultural history. To make whiskey from it just makes sense, especially if you've got a mash filter, a hammer mill and mash filter that can do it easily. It's very, very difficult to make a rye whiskey in a mash tun. It's exciting, but it's geeky exciting. 53% rye, 47% malted barley. So a lot of Scotch malt drinkers really don't get on with rye, and I understand why. Same. Every time I nose this, it's the same thing I get. Yes, there's rye there, but it's very, very soft. It's very delicate. So I'm not getting all of the kind of bright, soapy ginger, dill, spice, green grass, kind of all of the very, very typical rye notes that you get from a rye whiskey. All the kind of bright sparkle, sprinkle, fizz. This is softer. Why have I got a problem with this, and why did I put it in the naughty step for so long? Why didn't I talk about this when it was launched? When I first tried it, I didn't see the bottle it was going to go in. I didn't see how pretentious it was going to be, how weighty it was going to be, how over the top it was going to be. But I did hear the price, £110 for a 5-year-old whiskey. This bottle has been sat on the shelf since then. Every time I go into the Good Spirits Company in Glasgow, it's sitting there at the same price. Every time it's sitting there. This week, just past, for this vPub, I bought this whiskey. I paid £110 for one of the first Scottish rye whiskies. I suspect that my memory of this whiskey is correct and that it's good whiskey. But we're asking a lot of this whiskey for it to play like £110 worth of whiskey, because any of the other bottles I've had here are much cheaper than that, and some of them I could buy 2 of them for the price of this and still have change for the same age statement, well, made in a less efficient way. Unique. Absolutely, compellingly unique. Rye whiskey made in a way that a Scotch whiskey drinker, a bourbon drinker, any whiskey drinker could come to rye and say, ooh, that brings complexity, that brings detail, that brings interesting new notes in here. Something that you don't normally experience on other Scotch whiskies. The nose gives a hint of what's on the palate. It doesn't betray everything. The nose can even become, the nose is even a wee bit floral. But there is cask here. There is a sweetness here. There's a lot of kind of very, very typical whiskey notes on the toffee caramel end of spectrum. The fruit is melon and ripe and fruit bowl type. Fruit salad. But all the while you've got this detail, you've got this prickle, you've got this rye note in the background. And then when you sip it, the rye comes along. And this is an elegant whiskey too. I suspect it plays much older than its 5-year age. It doesn't have an age statement, but it's 5-year age. I think that you wouldn't suggest this is spirit forward. This is very, very well put together, very well selected, very well crafted whiskey, no doubt about it. I've paid £110 for it. I suspect that this bottle, with this ridiculously expensive, probably £10 worth of cork, £20 worth of bottle, at least, it's been deliberately premiumized, and there is nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with it whatsoever. However, I think there's an opportunity missed, because this is a product made that the enthusiasts can embrace and talk about. It's a product made that's completely different. It's not a single malt. It's not a blended Scotch whisky. It's a single grain, but even just explaining it away with the term single grain does not even begin to describe how seismic an arrival of a product this is. Charging £110 and putting it in a pretentious bottle like this is a blunder. And I will be called out on this if I'm wrong, and if they've made a tremendous success of it and they're very happy, that'll tell us that that's the case, because their next release will be the same. But I suggest to you that 6 months after this inaugural release came out, you can walk into most retailers that stocked it originally and it's still sitting there. Hopefully that tells them that it's a blunder. Glenn Anderson bought me a dram. Chinkapin produced rye for the Johnny Walker lineup. Would love a rye from them. Chinkapin is also, there's a reason for that, and Glenn, I don't doubt for a second you know this. Chinkapin also have a hammer mill and mash filter. Waterford is the other one in the British Isles. They also have a Mira mash filter. It's a very rare thing. There's a lot of cost involved in putting that in. I think the reason that Waterford have it is incidental, maybe a legacy, because of it used to be a brewery, of course, a Guinness brewery. But for it to be in a whiskey distillery in Scotland is rare. There are literally, in terms of malt distilleries in Scotland, there are two, Inchdairnie and Chinkapin. And you're right, I agree with you, Glenn Anderson. I would like to try what Chinkapin tastes like when it's a rye mash bill. Thanks for the dram, buddy. Cheers. I have to summarise now. And I have to kind of frame where I think my take is on this and why I think that the Ryelaw got it wrong. Whereas Isle of Harris is getting it pretty right. Meikle Tòir has given us some really straightforward, honest releases, and that's Holyrood has surprised the life out of me tonight. That's incredible. It's not what I expected at all. Never tried it before. All of these they've delivered on one thing: flavour forward. Flavour, flavour, flavour. Even that light touch Harris tonight, the softest of the lineup, they've kind of gone for probably a safer start, a cleaner, softer, fruitier style. But they've achieved that. I'll be honest with you, I'm not going to spend another £65 on another Harris. If it's the same as that, no, they need to bring me something more, something a bit more robust. They need to bring me something more natural. But I'm not upset that I have that here. Meikle Tòirs have surprised me tonight. Surprised me with their density, their variety. There's really quite distinctive profiles all threaded together with this interesting peat profile. £50 for this whiskey makes it something that I might start to actually recommend. Okay, I'll wait till the levels drop beyond the shoulder and I can get my head around a wee bit more. The Arrival, I think that's a compelling whiskey, I really do. This Ryelaw, equally compelling. And twice the price of some of the other whiskies I've been sharing with you tonight. I just don't know who it's pointed at. Because as much as I'm going to love the fact that I just have this now, I cannot recommend it to anyone at that price point. Because it's good whiskey, I just don't know that it can be £110 good whiskey. Having said that, the way the prices are going, it's crazy right now. That came out in February. All of these new whiskies, we're getting tired now, aren't we? There are too many brands. There are too many new brands. There are too many new distilleries. There are too many inaugural releases from new distilleries, and it's happening all the time. And even as whiskey enthusiasts, exciters, whiskey botherers, we're burnt out now. And we need to check ourselves. We need to give ourselves a face full of cold water, look at ourselves in the mirror and say, what's the alternative? We should be grateful that we are spoiled for choice today in 2023. Why? Because I'm telling you right now, the last time, and I wrote some prices down here, the last time I bought a bottle of Oban 14, I paid £49 for it. If I buy it today, I have to pay £84 on malts.com, but the general retail price out there in shops and bricks and mortar shops is £90. Close on doubled in price. Lagavulin 16, £54, the last price I paid for a bottle of Lagavulin 16, there or thereabouts. Perma-shelf item for me, not anymore. £83 at malts.com and £90. And that is the softest offender in the Diageo lineup, because it's 16-year-old Lagavulin. Okay, it's presented 43%, it's coloured, and we're never going to change Diageo's minds about that. They're quite happy to do that to their whiskey, fine. I owe my passion to that bottle. But once my 16 runs out, I'm not going to replace it. Not at that price point. If you bring it a wee bit more natural, yeah, I'll even pay a wee bit more, honestly speaking. Let's look at Talisker 18. In the 2021 inaugural OSWAs, it was nominated. £78. £78 I paid from Royal Mill Whiskies to get a bottle of it delivered to me. Today, if I go into malts.com, I need to pay £200. And if I want to walk into a local bricks and mortar place here, £245. Look at the special releases. Look at what Macallan have done to us over the years. Look at what more age-stated whiskies from any of the recognised brands are doing to us. They're leaving us and they're telling us we're out of here. There are people way, way, way more richer than you willing to spend much, much more on our whiskies, and we're going to milk that until it's dry. They're telling us that. How dare we turn our nose up at how many new distilleries are coming along with new and exciting flavour-forward things. But I say to these new distilleries, you've got an audience now. You've got us here. We're interested, and there's a space for you to come in. Please don't abuse us. If you need to make your inaugurals a wee bit more expensive, if you need to get some capital back, if you need to raise some fervour and excitement with your new releases, please do that. But don't abuse us. Because if you bring integrity and honesty forward, we will stay, we will be loyal, and more than that, we will talk loudly about how good your whiskey is. Because yes, it's about flavour, yes, it's about integrity, but more and more and more it becomes about us parting with cash. This is surely a blunder of Annandale scale. These are everywhere in between. Those releases from Glenallachie, those Meikle Tòirs, 50 quid for that is, we can't have any argument with it. We can decide individually one by one which is for us, which is not for us, if any of them are. But they've really tried their best here. No frills, direct, transparent, straightforward. And two inaugural releases that honestly are harbingers of an exciting future for enthusiasts. Yes, I can't keep up. I'm a whiskey geek. It's my job. It's my job. And it's difficult to keep up with releases, new distilleries, everything. It really is. That's a positive complaint to have. The alternative is not. Ben is saying, I'm still buying Lindor's members releases. A distillery I think will be the new beacon of whiskey. I think Lindor's are going to continue to get better and better and better. I think Kingsbarns are going to get better and better and better. And there are so many others out there that are ready to step into that place. Peter is saying ridiculous prices indeed, but we're lucky. And we still do have a quiz. We do have a quiz. We do have a quiz, buddy. Listen, if anybody's enjoyed me just banging on, and this is not me showing off, opening these whiskies in front of you to say, look what whiskies I've got. I do my very, very best to share all of these whiskies. Any of you that know me well enough will know how much I share these whiskies. My job to you is to open them, and then eventually get my way through them and potentially review them in a recycled review once I've got through the empty bottle and tell you how my journey's been with the whiskies. My job is to do this on your behalf and put your money where I think it should, help you put your money where I think it should go. The Kingsbarns Bellrock is awesome. You're not the first person to say that, you know that. Everybody's raving about that. I think it's one of their batch releases as well. Peter Lee is saying, actually, I like a solo from Roy from time to time. From time to time, Peter, thank you very much, buddy. I like you hanging out here as well from time to time. Whiskey with Molly saying, I feel sorry for you that you spent £110 on that Inchdairnie. I might have bought it for a reason, Ben. Okay, good. Yes, we do indeed have a quiz at the end. We have a fun quiz at the end. 2 hours and 9. It doesn't matter whether I've got a guest on or if it's just me banging my guns. It's just a solo session, Peter. I still seem to fill the time. But these have been good whiskies. 6 bottles I've shared with you tonight. Interesting whiskies. So that's on average 20 minutes per bottle. I think most reviewers out there would spend 20 minutes reviewing a bottle these days. And I hope that the vPub offers something a wee bit different. Andrew Pierce is saying Annandale have softened their prices a little. I notice around £70 today. Yes, now on the Whisky Exchange, but I think they have burnt bridges. It's not that they burnt bridges. I think that we just didn't know who it was for. £120, it's got to be geek whiskey. 60% ABV, it's got to be geek whiskey. And then you look at the presentation and the story and the market behind it, and it's like, no, it's pointed at tourists. It's like, I don't know who this is from. I just don't know. It's just, I just don't know. I don't understand the mentality behind it. Yeah. Justin Wan is saying, I'm going for 10 out of 10 tonight. I can feel it. Peathead is mentioning masochism. And Whiskey with Molly saying, thanks, Roy. I love the vPub tonight. Ben, thank you, buddy. Thank you for everything that you do. Do you know what I loved this week? Making dinner while I had one earbud in, listening to Whiskey with Molly, Ben, on the Honest to a Malt podcast. Fantastic chat that you had. Fantastic geeky to and fro, just brilliant stuff. All talking about going to festivals and the do's and don'ts of festivals. Not once did you mention spittoon, but that's probably my number one thing about don't worry about offending people at a festival about a spittoon. If you are, just take your whiskey to the next table that you go and tip it in the spittoon, rinse the glass, drink what you're rinsing, fill the glass, drink it, and then go on and just keep the pace going. Chat. Keep the pace going, because the whiskey will just sneak up on you and hit you. Loved it. Did you hear me? Justin Wan is saying, I'm going to smash your sloppily put together quiz tonight. Oh, the swagger. I like it, Justin. And Pedro in Brazil is saying, good evening, Barflies, good evening, Aquavite. I've been listening podcast style and now, but I'm here for the quiz. Okay, you're ripping off the shirt. You're settling down. I can tell that there's some real application happening tonight. Okay. Get ready and put the wheels on the quiz. I feel like it's quite an easy one tonight. And yet, in fact, I will predict that somebody's going to get 10 out of 10. Remember the old days when we used to give the quizzes to Doc, Macallan Fine and Rare first, so that he could try and predict what the score was going to be? I think that there will be 10 out of 10s tonight. I wish you all the very, very best. I did say don't drink the full dram. You did say that, Ben. Don't give it all away. Go and listen to Honest to a Malt and listen to Ben hanging out and talking all things Whiskey Festival. And David in Portugal is saying, shouting to the wind, this is my job. It fills me with incredible joy that we can make it happen, and well-deserved success. Cheers. David, thank you so much. Colin is saying, Colin, dogs have no uncles. That is, I felt I'd smashed the quiz, but I had a few while watching this. I'll be happy with 5. No, it's going to sharpen your knowledge. It's going to bring back memories. You're going to do well. Good luck, everybody. All the best for the quiz. Remember, it's always multiple choice. You're just here for fun. You don't need to share the score if you don't want to, but hopefully most of the questions are put together with fun in mind. And if it's not fun, it's maybe something that's piqued your curiosity, or maybe if we're really lucky, you learn a wee factoid or two. Question 1. Which distillery sits just north of the highest village in the Highlands? By highest, I'm talking about altitude. Which distillery sits north of the highest village in the Highlands? Is it A, Tomintoul, B, Tomatin, or C, Tullibardine? The highest distillery in Scotland, I believe, by a mere few metres, is Dalwhinnie. Until somebody builds a brand new distillery atop Ben Nevis or something like that. Which distillery sits just north of the highest village in the Highlands? When I say just north, I'm speaking about directly adjacent, immediately right next to, might even be named after the town. So I hope that helps a wee bit. Change your mind while you can. It is, of course, Tomintoul. Tomintoul isn't the highest distillery, but it does sit directly north of the highest town in the Highlands. Remember where I get most of the ammunition. I say most, sometimes I'll dip into other books as well. Sometimes I'll dip into other content, of course, but sometimes I enjoy just mining all the quiz questions from Ingvar's Malt Whisky Yearbook, and it'll be Ingvar that's joining me on the 2nd of November. Question 2, Samsara and Vinaya. I think that's the right pronunciation, or I hope I'm pronouncing it well or spelling it correctly. Samsara and Vinaya are expressions released from which producer? A. Rampur in India, B. Nika in Japan, or C. Bladnoch in Scotland? Samsara and Vinaya. Yeah, I think I've spelt it correctly. Easy one for all of you knowledgeable whisky folk. Of course, we're not in India, we're not in Japan, we're much closer to home. Samsara, Vinaya, as well as a couple more here mentioned. Leora, Alinta, non-age statement expressions from Bladnoch in the Lowlands. Question 3. Which of these old school features is true of Bimber Distillery down in London? And when I say old school, yeah, hopefully you get my sentiment here. You'll see it when you see the options. Which of these old school features is true of Bimber Distillery in London? A. They feature floor malted barley. B. They feature open top washbacks. Or C. They feature direct fired stills. Greg's Whisky Guide 1 out of 2 because I was not there for question 1. Take it. It was an easy one, Greg, and you know it. I guarantee you know it, buddy. Matthew's here, Matthew Multi-Haggis Muncher, who actually runs the shop that I've bought these Meikle Tòirs from. Thank you, Matthew, for your service and your communication. Kinnaird Head Whiskies. I bought the Hearach from, well, my pal got it for me. Arrival I bought from the Bonaccord bottle shop, and Ryelaw I bought from Good Spirits Company. Other preferred retailers are available. One of my favourites, Royal Mill Whiskies. Lots of them out there. Greg's Whisky Guide is saying B. I'm going with the crowd. Well, I can tell you it doesn't matter what you would have picked tonight, because I can tell you that Bimber has featured floor malted barley. It has featured its open top washbacks and its direct fired stills. So that's a freebie. Nobody's going to get a donut on tonight's vPub quiz at the end. Question 4. How many malt whisky distilleries are currently owned by International Beverage, formerly known as Inverhouse? So I still say Inverhouse. The proper name for them now, I think inverhouse.com is now ditched, but it's International Beverage these days. How many distilleries do they own? How many malt whisky distilleries do they own? A, 4 malt whisky distilleries, B, 5 malt whisky distilleries, or C, 6 malt whisky distilleries. Bonus points not available if you can mention them, if you can name them. Let's go through this again. Let's go back to the... Still not getting much in the way of smoke on the Harris. I'm sorry. It's down to me. It's not down to the lack of smoke. Andrew Piers is saying banana skin worry, but saying B. Dogs have no uncles. B. Lots and lots of B's from the barflies in the lounge. Justin Wright is saying C. Whiskey with Molly Ben is saying C. Canny thoughts from Ben and Justin, because International Beverage, they own Balmenic, They own Old Pulteney, they own Balblair, they own Knockdhu, which is Annock, of course, and they own Speyburn, and they own Cardrona. 6, that's the banana skin, is Cardrona. In September, just a month ago, they announced that they had purchased Cardrona Distillery in New Zealand. I think I've lost a lot of barflies there. I think there's a lot of people going to be pissed off. Specifically, when I ask these questions, I usually say Scotch malt whiskey distilleries. I hope that might help some folk. I put the banana skin in there deliberately, Andrew, as you quite rightly noticed, in order for people to think twice and just have another wee chew. But there you go. 6. Question 5 is always the picture question. Here's quite a pretty wee scene. And I'm just going to ask you, where are we there? Look at that wee boat on the horizon. I hope you can see that. Are we A, on Islay, B, on Arran, or C, on Orkney? Where are we to see that scene? A, Islay, B, Arran, or C, Orkney? Frank is off. He's not happy. Well, it was great meeting you, Roy. Bye-bye. He's in a huff with me. So sorry. Come on, Frank, stick with it. The rest of the quiz is going to, hopefully, you'll be able to redeem yourself. Everybody's going for A, closest to Shetland. Not quite. A is absolutely Islay. And this is the wee kind of narrow walkway that you walk through as you walk down to the Lefroy Visitor Centre. If you follow around the buildings and don't just walk down the main road where all the trucks and things are like I often do, this is the way it'll take you out, and this is the view that you get of the bay as you arrive. Fantastic it is too. It is, of course, Lefroy on Islay. Question 6. Some distilleries are able to make use of additional flavours. And I want to say more than flavours. I want to talk about body here as well, derived from a Maillard type reaction, But where in the process might this happen? Where does a Maillard type reaction happen in the production of malt whiskey? Is it A, during mashing, B, during fermentation, or C, during distillation? Typically speaking, where does a Maillard type reaction in the context of Scotch whisky malt production? My throat is pretty sore. I'm a wee bit nervous. I'm in for something. Feels a wee bit hot and jaggy. Maybe it put off my tasting notes tonight. I should caveat it. This is definitely splitting the crowd. Definitely splitting the crowd. I should have got a photo. I should have got an image actually, because it would have been nice to show what happens here. But typically in Scotch whisky, a Maillard type reaction is from when solids they stick to the base of a copper pot still when it's direct fired. And what they need to implement is steel kind of chain rummagers that turn around and keep the solids from sticking too much and causing too much influence from this reaction. It's from typically direct fired stills. So it's distillation I was after. Kyle Taylor is saying maybe based on a friend's advice, you need some bourbon. Got plenty of bourbon here, Kyle. Plenty of bourbon. I do enjoy a wee departure now and again. Jimmy Legg is saying, I feel like you're going to feel fine tomorrow morning, Roy. Because you know the magic of whiskey, don't you, Jimmy? Let's hope so. Let's hope so. Family's arriving tomorrow. I really hope so. Question 7 from 2023. This year, a new visitor experience will allow you to see a decommissioned but still in situ drum maltings. One of the first drum maltings ever installed, if that helps you at all. Where is it? Is it A, at Dallasdhu Distillery in Forres? Is it B, at Port Ellen Maltings on Islay? Or is it C, at Speyburn Distillery in Rothes? Where could you see, only from this year, in terms of public access, a decommissioned but still in situ original antique drum maltings? Dallasdhu, Port Ellen, or Speyburn? Daniel Williams in the Netherlands is saying good night all. Thank you, buddy, for joining in tonight. Thank you for hanging out with us. Time for a dram. Gregor is here. I make steaks and I know things, Jimmy. So that's of course, if you grill a steak, the Maillard reaction is part of it. Jerry Miller is saying, I should have done chores instead of the quiz. No, 4 out of 6 is a great score. Jerry, come on, stick with it. So most of you have got this absolutely right. Speyburn Distillery will open its doors to tours after a successful, I believe, Speyside Whisky Festival. They're going to do tours now, and they are the distillery with the original, the first ever drum maltings was installed at Speyburn Distillery, and they still have it there as a bit of a showpiece. Graham Fraser, if he's in tonight, would probably be able to tell us about it and probably his photos. Question 8, how many distilleries currently possess a royal warrant? How many distilleries currently possess a royal warrant? Suddenly looking at the scores to see if there are any 7 out of 7s, and it doesn't look like there are many. Let's see. A, one distillery has a royal warrant, and that is Royal Lochnagar. B, 2 distilleries have a royal warrant, and that's Royal Lochnagar and Laphroaig. Or C, 3 distilleries have a royal warrant, and that is Royal Lochnagar, Laphroaig, and Royal Bracla. Jimmy Legg is saying a UK royal warrant. Yes, absolutely a UK royal warrant. Are there other royal warrants for Scotch whisky? Greg's Whisky Guide is saying currently. Absolutely currently. It's in the question. Currently is key. Why the banana, Roy, says Jimmy Legg. Chew on it a wee bit, buddy. Justin Wan is saying, does the passing of Queen Elizabeth II change things? Absolutely. It's critical. Dogs Have No Uncles is saying, I'll go with C, as I got it wrong in the past. I'm saying C, knowing the banana skin will probably have me again, says Andrew Pierce. Ah, dearie me, dearie me. I can tell you that Royal Lochnagar has its royal warrant from Charles. Laphroaig has its royal warrant from Charles. Royal Bracla does not have its royal warrant from Charles. So those 2, Royal Lochnagar and Laphroaig, have royal warrants. Doesn't say Scotch whisky, Ugun. I suppose I probably assumed that, Jimmy Legg. So I'll take the goon on the chin, and I'll say that probably for clarity I should have said Scotch whisky. But when I'm discussing royal warrants, yes, I should have said it. I'm quickly losing my taste for bananas, says Mike Molasses. Sandro is celebrating on a 6 out of 8. An excess to Scotch. Oh my goodness, 4 out of 8. Damn, there's still 2 questions left for you to get your 5 pass mark. Dacey is in with a 5 pass mark already, as is Aris Moose. Erwin also. Whiskey from the Vestibule. That looks like a new name, saying boo. Welcome in, Whiskey from the Vestibule. Stick with it, my friend. Too Slow's got his pass mark, as is Darth Kermit and Pedro Menezes on a strong 7. It's the highest I've seen so far. Pedro. Question 9, second from last. Which of these distilleries has whiskey but has yet to release? They have whiskey that is past the point of going from spirit maturing in a cask to actually legally being called whiskey, but they have not yet released. A, Jackton. B, Dunfale. C, the Cairn. Now, I know all of you can look at these and say none of these have released yet, but one of them has whiskey that is, I don't know how much they have, but they at least have some that can legitimately be called whiskey. Sugar Kitty saying, I think we've only got 2 headed to possible 10s. Sugar Kitty, can you let me know who they are? I have missed them. So there's 2 out there with looking for a 10 out of 10. Certainly on the live, obviously people play it on the replay. Some people are able to snag a wee 10 on the replay. If you are watching the replay, open up the live chat. It's great fun, and you can do what everybody gets to do live, and that's kind of decide if they're going to play to go with the crowd or not. I follow the crowd as always and say C, says Dogs Have No Uncles. Okay. I can tell you, Whiskey with Molly thinks it's A, Jackton. I can tell you, Ben, Whiskey with Molly, you're correct. Dunfale is owned by Bimber, not old enough yet to have 3-year-old whiskey. The Cairn amazingly managed to pull a distillery together and finish it during COVID, but unfortunately they still don't have whiskey. But Jackton have been producing since, I think, some in 2019, but certainly 2020. Jackton has 3-year-old spirit and beyond available. Still not released anything yet. Like I say, I don't even know how much there is of it. Jackton is the answer I'm looking for. 9 out of 9 for Graham Brown. He's one of our guys on for a 10 out of 10 tonight. Fantastic. So Sugar Kitty, you need to tell me who the other guy was. Andrew Butler and Graham Brown, what I saw. Andrew Butler, of course. We're always looking at Andrew Butler, aren't we? Question 10 is, of course, the ASAC question, deliberately meant to be awkward, obtuse, and difficult, and I don't know how bad it is tonight. Let's see what you guys think. Question 10, of the world's top 30 whiskey brands, how many are Scotch? Brands, not top distilleries or single malts, top 30 whiskey brands, how many are Scotch? Is it A, the same, about the same as the distilleries owned by Chivas? That's Pernod Ricard, Scotch distilleries, of course. B, is it about the same as the age statement on the oldest core release Daft Mill released to date? Or C, is it about the same as active Scotch malt distilleries located north of Inverness? Now, last week I blundered, didn't I? And I gave you all a freebie at the ASAT at the end. Unfortunately for Andrew Butler and for Graham Brown, that's not the case this week, I hope. I think this is going to keep you going. The ass hat has scuppered me the last 2 times, says Andrew Butler. I'm sorry, buddy. I'm worried it might do tonight as well. What's Andrew Butler and Graham Brown going to be answering tonight? Have you already put your answer in? Anthony Dunn has bought me a dram. Thank you so much, Anthony. He's saying a wee dram to finish off your vPub stream. 3 out of 9. Ugh, Anthony, you're not going to make the official pass mark tonight, but you're a superstar for participating, and you're a pal for buying me a dram as well. Cheers to you, Anthony Dunn. Thank you, my friend. Looking for Graham. Can't quite see him. I might just be missing your name, Graham. I'm looking for Andrew as well. Okay, I'll just reveal that active Scotch malt distilleries located north of Inverness is somewhere in the order of, depending on where you want to draw the line of the top of Inverness, somewhere in the order of 20 plus distilleries. The age statement on the oldest Daft Mill core range that's released to date is 15 years old. Francis was on a couple of weeks ago and we talked about it at length. And distilleries, Scotch malt distilleries owned by Chivas is, of course, 12. Out of the top 30 whiskey brands that are Scotch brands, the number is 12. A is the correct answer to tonight's awful, brutal ass hat. Graham Brown is celebrating because you've kicked out the park, buddy. I can see an A next to your name. Please let it be the same for Andrew as well. Please let it be the same for Andrew Butler. Hey, Andrew, I hope that it is, buddy. I'm not seeing your name. I'm not seeing you. Regardless. 12 brands out of the top 30 brands globally is, of course, Andrew Butler is celebrating a 10 out of 10. Thank goodness. I'm feeling bad. Feeling bad. That was going to let people down and I've pissed people off again. Listen, if you were scuppered by the banana skins tonight, if you tripped up on some of the awkward questions, the idea of the vPub isn't, the quiz at the end isn't for it to be easy. If it was a 10 out of 10 every week, I'm sure you would get bored of it quite quickly. It's intended to be a wee bit crunchy and make you think, and I don't know. However, Andrew Butler is no stranger to a 10 out of 10. Graham, well done to you too. A fantastic achievement from both of you. 10 out of 10 on that quiz tonight. I have to say, I did predict some 10 out of 10s, but as I was going through it, I thought, oh no, this is tougher than I imagined. That's an amazing achievement. Anything as a pass mark tonight is fantastic. Well done, Graham. Well done, Andrew Butler. Cheers. And a dram coming in from Jimmy at the end. I love you as almost as much as I love Peter Lee. I don't know what... I don't mind. I know you now, Jimmy. I don't mind. It's a very, very Jimmy-like compliment. I love you too, my friend. I love Peter Lee too. Fantastic. Justin Mann is saying, I passed your quiz at 5 out of 10. Lesson learned, not to trash talk against the guru. Buy a bottle of gin for a change of scenery for your holiday and see you when you're back, says Justin Mann. I don't think my brother would tolerate... Well, I do need to buy some gin for the holiday, but probably as an aperitif, and maybe something for my wife and my sister-in-law to enjoy while they're away too. Thank you very much, Justin, for your generous dram. Great vPub, Roy. Enjoy your break, says Danny Keenan. So good to see you in, Danny. Amazing, and thank you for the dram. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you, Anthony Dunn. Thank you, Danny Keenan. Cheers. That Arrival is very, 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 very fermentation forward. It's just so fruity. My goodness. What is that I've just had? Terrific. Are you taking a bottle on holiday, says Ben, Whiskey with Molly? Hey, my brother and I will be taking a few, my friend. We'll be taking a few. Molasses saying, cheers, Aquavita. Enjoy the holiday with your family. Thank you very much, Mike. Thank you so much. I just need to, the folk who are coming to look after our cats, I just need to instruct them which whiskies they can touch and which ones they have to not touch. Anyway, I'll raise all a wee glass to you. I've enjoyed tonight. I've been saving these whiskies up for a while, desperate to get them opened, desperate to share with you what I felt they were all about. But of course, it's always just my one man's opinion. And as you make your way out there in the whiskey world, you'll happen across these as sample shares, clubs, events, hopefully bar pours and things like that, rather than you just kind of going out on what I say. If I was to pick a favourite tonight, I can't see past the Arrival. The Ryelaw is a beautiful whiskey, no doubt about it, just too expensive. The Meikle Tòirs are straightforward, transparent, and the Hearach is remarkably soft and elegant compared to expectations. But they all, I think, are good, positive harbingers of potential and possibility if we get some integrity from producers for the future. Molasses is saying, add me to the list of cat sitters. Absolutely. And Jimmy Legg is saying, don't let me ever look after your cats. Danny Keane is saying, any smoke on the Harris yet? Lol. Aye, okay. Just a beat, just a wisp. Really not much. But I bet you, as I sit with this and I finish and that's an empty glass, I bet you the smoke starts to pop. Aye. Jamie Love is saying, great vPub. Roy sent you a message on Patreon about a place in the blind tasting challenge at the casino after Glasgow Whisky Festival, if any space available. I think it is full, Jamie. You send me a wee direct message. Patrons and people travelling, of course, are prioritised. I've made a note of your name. I'll do my very, very best I can, buddy. I'll do my best I can. Alan Smith is saying your cats drink whiskey. And Daisy is saying, thank you for another great vPub, Roy. Enjoy your holiday and see you in 2 weeks. Daisy, I'm glad that you're going to be able to make it, of course. Get in touch and we'll work out what's happening with your ticket and things. Erwin is saying, good night, Barflies. Cheers. Another great vPub. Enjoy your time away. Erwin, thank you so much for participating and joining as always. Listen, thanks to everybody for hanging out with me for another 2 hours, 38 minutes. Ridiculous, really. Hope you've broken it up and enjoyed it podcast style. Looking forward to hanging out with you in 2 weeks' time when I have Ingvar Rond joining me, the author of the Malt Whisky Yearbook. It's been a while since we've had Ingvar on. It's going to be interesting to chat to him. In the meantime, I'm going to raise this glass and thank you all. Remind you that you're very dearly loved. And thank you for everything that you do to keep the vPub going every week. Slant your barflies.